Good morning, Guardians. I'm Arch Burgundy, and today's top story, Barrels and Mags Overview, Destiny 2, The Final Shape. I am excited. This is going to be a great video. As I said in my intro to the channel video, this is basically going to be a podcast style. There's too much in-depthness here for me to not talk about it over time and let it evolve, rather than just doing like a quick little this is what you want, blah blah blah, and then cut right to the next gun. It's not going to be like that. I will be putting timestamps for the type of gun, not the sub-archetype of gun, so you'll have to skip ahead or play around with whatever you want to view. So a few things before we get started. Right, is this a good roll? That is the question that I'm trying to answer with this video. So many people ask me this question. They get a gun, they're like, is this a good roll? And I'm basically like listening to them read off the perks, and I'm like, this, that, you know, out of the two perks that you get on most guns, if you've got the third and fourth perk columns that you want, right, you just have to make a decision of what's the best thing you have available to you. But if you're really trying to hunt for that gun, obviously the third and fourth perks are more important, but this video is still something that I need to cover, because if you're really trying to go for that like 5 out of 5 to fit your build, this is very important information that you need to understand. So with that being said, first rule, every gun in the game might be somebody's favorite gun. So while I think that there's some guns that are worse than others, I'm not going to make opinions or decisions based on how I feel about a gun or how I know it works. I'm just going to offer you the best possible roll for a gun, even if I don't think you should be using it, because I'm not the dictator of the world. I don't think that, you know, people shouldn't use the guns that they don't want to use. Destiny is a game for anybody. You can play any different sorts of game modes and have fun using the gun that you like to use. Second rule, everybody has an opinion. That doesn't always mean you're right. And a lot of information in the Destiny community, like how many times I've been in a raid encounter and someone's like, why do you have enhanced battery on? You should have accelerated coils. And I'm like, yeah, well, it's already a 550 charge time. Like, it's the fastest charge rate of all the fusion rifles. I don't think, you know, adding accelerated battery is really going to push it way over the top compared to like a 740 or a 960. So when someone tells you you're wrong, it'd be smarter of you to be able to explain why you have something on than for you to just be like, no, I'm right. And that's another thing that I really aim to do with this video, is just give you knowledge so you can make a build. So when someone critiques you, which I don't want to happen, you know, you can explain, well, this is why I have it. This is why it makes it feel better. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you're supposed to put on the barrel and mag and the masterwork and the mod that makes the gun feel better for you. Like, some people are way better with snipers than I am, so they're going to be like, oh, this is what you should run, but that might not feel good to you, and you might like using other things than what other people are using. Third rule, I actually just covered that. So last rule, consistency over exhausting gameplay loops. This is super important to me because as someone who does a lot of raids, a lot of dungeons, and I consecutively play at a higher level than most people that I've ever played with, I build my guns for consistency, right? If you have a perk where, you know, you shoot 5 different enemies, you get 100% damage boost for 5 seconds, and then it goes away, right? That kind of stuff is good in solo gameplay where you get to be the master of your arena. But when it comes to things like raids where you might be getting assists and people are stealing your kills, or you're a Sunbracer Warlock trying to get that snap melee off and somebody snipes it right in front of your face, wasted your melee, you don't get your Sunbraces off, right? These are things that when you start to play in 3s and 6s, you start to see certain damage mods or perks just basically like not even be effective. Like, you're not even using it, right? Like kill activated perks, but maybe you're, you know, a runner for a mechanic in a raid, or maybe there's not even like low level ads for you to kill. There's just like 2 majors or something, right? Like, these are just things I want you to take into consideration. This channel is about consistency. That's how I build my guns. I want them to feel good. I want them to feel good all the time. I don't want them to just feel good on a Tuesday night when I'm at Red Robin, all right? That's not the perk activation that I'm looking for. So really, before I get started, A couple notes of why I'm making this video and like why it's super important now more than ever. So the final shape is removing damage mods, and a lot of people are instantly going, backup mag is going to be my play. Even if you don't care about anything I'm about to have to say and you're just going to run backup mag, that's fine. But just know that if you're running backup mag and like tac mag, extended mag, appended mag, enhanced battery, there are magazine cap sizes that some people don't even know about, and you might actually be sacrificing stats to try to hit a magazine size that's not even possible, right? Like even if you stacked extended mag and backup mag on a sniper, you're still only going to get one extra shot. You can't add like 4 more shots to a sniper magazine. The game just isn't coded like that. It doesn't work like that. It goes off of like a percentage, and you're just not going to be able to hit that percentage. With that being said, not all weapons are built the same. Base stats on weapons determine a lot of what barrels and mags you might be using. Not all pulse rifles come with great recoil direction. Some might not. Like you might have a competitive pulse rifle, usually has higher stats than other pulse rifles. Given though that the perk pool is mostly for like PvP and not PvE, you know, if you still wanted to use something like that, you might be able to get away with not using some of the barrels and mags that I'm going to recommend for certain archetypes, because some guns are just built differently. Like it's crazy. We went over max stat sizes. Exotics and mods can also change how a weapon works. But you also might be building yourself into a corner. So what I mean by that is essentially, right, you might be using things that actually just like max out certain stats, and you're basically like not using the gun or the armor the right way. And what I mean by that is like, let's say you had frenzy on a gun and you're running flared magwell and you have Ophidian aspects or one of the exotics that's boosts your reload speed, and you're running reload mods on your arms. That is just crazy. Like obviously the gun itself is what I'm trying to get to today. So I just want you to take into consideration, if you are someone who like mains an exotic that helps you boost your weapons capabilities, or you use mods a lot, that you might not need to do some of the things I'm saying in the video because they might not pertain to you. You might love Ophidian aspects, and you know, you're not going to need any handling mods because you're just going to be maxing out your handling stat anyway. So you're just overkilling it. Another side note with that is in PvE, I don't really like to use gun mods because they don't really offer that much of an advantage unless I just have nothing going on in my build where I need like arm mods. Like if I'm not running melee kickstart or grenade kickstart, like maybe the build is really gun heavy and I'm just mostly using my gun with my exotic or maybe an exotic gun to really like mow down ads. It's just not like, maybe I'll add on a loader or something, or a targeting. I would probably never run a targeting in PvE, but you know, to each his own. Next point, I am not covering PvP weapons. There are some guns that are going to come up in here, and like gun archetypes that really feel catered to PvP. I'm still going to try to offer you the best explanation that I can for a PvP styled gun that you might like using in PvE. A great example of this is Igneous Hammer, right? It's a 120. I rarely use 120s in PvE. That's mostly because of the perk pool that they get, but like Igneous Hammer actually gets, you know, rapid hit and incandescent. So if that's something that you like using 120s, and you don't want to use a 140 or 180 that has incandescent, you know, I will try to offer you the best explanation I can for a PvP archetype weapon. Not all weapons in the same archetype are built the same. That means that the barrels and mags actually kind of change as you start to go through the slower to faster firing archetypes. I will tell you right now off the rip that basically, right, rapid fire frames, not just for pulse rifles, I usually like to run arrowhead break if the recoil direction is just terrible, because the whole point of the fast firing weapon is that it's going to be harder to control the longer you shoot it. So having good recoil direction helps with that. And I am on a PC, so I'm not, you know, I'm not a controller playing being like, I can't handle the recluse, it's crazy, right? Like I play on PC, I have a slight advantage when it comes to being able to keep my weapon stable, but you know, the way that guns are built is you can just kind of ignore certain things because they're kind of inherently better at doing certain things. Another thing too is like the frame of a gun can have a lot to do with how it works in terms of like reload speed or like stability. Some frames just have naturally built-in like hidden factors. So like a rapid fire frame usually always has like a 0.85 modifier on your reload speed. So if you're trying to cap your reload speed out at 100 for whatever reason, just know that like even if you had it at like 70 and you had a rapid fire frame, it would really feel no different to you. We're talking about milliseconds at that point. Last but not least, adept mods. So for adept weapons, you might say like, oh, I'm just going to run adept backup mag. I just want to squash that right now. Adept backup mag might not even give you more ammo than like a regular backup mag, or even possibly like an appendage mag or attack mag, depending on the archetype. And they also have negative stat value. So by putting on a backup mag, you like nerf your reload speed, or it might be your handling. We'll check when we get into it. But it's the same thing with like extended mag. You're trying to get a couple more shots, but you're nerfing your reload speed. If you don't have something like a hunter with lucky pants, where your like handling is maxed out, like I still have to run loader mods on a Warden's Law when I'm doing a lucky pants build because it's just so slow. I mean, you could also use your class ability like a dodge. These are just things to consider, but I'm trying to like ignore all of that and just give you the base weapon so that the base weapon feels good. The point of this is that the base weapon itself is what carries your gunplay. As we get into the final shape, gunplay is like more important to me because they're trying to get the game to revolve more around guns and less around abilities. Even though they're giving us the most broken subclass that has ever existed, I'm going to be spamming consecrations everywhere. That doesn't mean that I don't want to go around a public space and like really wreck house with a gun that just feels absolutely great. Because there's the one thing that keeps Bungie and Destiny alive is how great the gunplay feels. Like equipping a pulse rifle of this archetype between the difference of a pulse rifle of another archetype, it just is like night and day, and you're like, this one feels so much better. Even in the same archetype, you're like, wow, this blast furnace just rips all other archetypes or all other pulse rifles in its archetype to shreds, right? All right, so last thing, and then we'll get into pulse rifles, is stat overview. So I'm just gonna pull up a random gun. We'll do Luna's Howl. So I'm just going to go over stats and what they are, if you, just in case you have like no idea some of the hidden benefits of stats. Range affects damage fall off, right? There are certain ways around this. Explosive payload does just a flat damage number based on your weapon at certain ranges. That's why Sunshot feels so good, because you're literally hitting something. The impact damage sucks, but the explosive payload is just wrecking house. I used it on week 4 Pantheon Nezarec, and I was cross mapping Legionnaires, like 3-shotting them because Sunshot was just absolutely destroying, right? So that's how range works. It's also more of a PvP thing in terms of like us trying to max out our range. I don't find it necessary to like overkill range in PvE, because I would argue that you're in a bad position to like make that advance. Like if you're trying to snipe something with a sidearm, obviously that's not right. I'm also not here to tell you, oh, why are you using a sidearm? Put on a scout rifle. I'm not that guy. I don't want to be that guy, right? You would just have to develop your gameplay around how you want to play. So if you're someone who loves long range and you want to sit back with a scout rifle all day and, you know, never leave the spawn point, be my guest, dude. But for the people who want to go out there and use a sidearm and just get in people's faces and like getting heel clip off, right? Like, you don't need a lot of range to close the gap on enemies. You need range if you're trying to use something way too far than you should be using it. Stability helps with flinch. So incoming flinch while you're shooting. You ever try to shoot an ogre during a boss phase and he's just blasting you in the face? Yeah, that's what that helps control. Not the ogre blasting you, but the actual you shooting. It also helps with reticle bounce. I do not have like some crazy video to post up here about like, oh, at 60 stability it bounces at 0.0157 and at, you know, 70 stability at 0.0154, right? Like, I don't have that video. I can just say from experience that, you know, weapons with higher stability, they feel better to shoot. They have like less vertical or recoil bounce. It's easier to like consecutively land shots. You know, if you had a pulse rifle with like 0 stability, it would just feel like you're just firing up a Gatling gun, hip firing it up in the air. Like, it would be really hard to control. And as soon as you got shot, your reticle is just going to start bouncing all over the place. Handling is ADS and how fast you pull the weapon out. So you'll see handling a lot higher on PvP guns. It's not a stat that I will try to heavily build into, but it is there if you want it. I just want you to understand what handling is and what it does, because if you don't know, it'll just kind of make you realize like, oh, this weapon feels this good because the handling is really good. Like, if you look at a 120 hand cannon, the handling sucks. Like, pulling that thing out is like, you're like, oh, let me get this thing out, versus like pulling out a 180, you're like, skirt, you know, bink, bink, bink. So that's what handling does. Reload speed, obviously how fast you reload the gun. Depending on certain types of guns, I just covered this, right? Like rapid fire frames. Usually when you get a perk in the 3rd or 4th column, you can get things that can increase your reload speed. You know, either max out the stat or either decrease the modifier at which you reload. So if you're at like 54 and you have a 0.85, right, it's 0.85 of 54. But if you have 100, it's 0.85 of 100. So just keep that in mind. Like I said before, this is all about consistency. And for me, I want my gun to do everything I want my gun to do. And I'm sorry that's vague if it sounds vague, but essentially what I'm trying to say is, like, I'll use Frenzy as an example, right? I might not build into reload speed because, you know, things like Rapid Hit or Frenzy will max my reload speed out for me. A great example of this, before we get into it, this will be the last thing, is Unforgiven. Unforgiven is like one of my favorite SMGs, but the reload speed is terrible. And the origin trait was supposed to like boost it, but it feels like I have to be on the verge of death to get increase to reload speed. So I had been chasing a role for a while, like a demo adrenaline junkie, and I finally realized this thing had Frenzy on it, and I'm like, why have I not been chasing a Frenzy role? I would just max that reload speed out, and I could use the barrels and mags and the masterwork to build in to get the gun to feel better. That's what this video is about. I know I'm not covering perks today. We'll do that at a later video, but I don't think you need to know all of the gun's perk combinations to instantly know, like, oh, this is a 180, this is what I want to use on it, right? Like, these are the choices I have. So with that being said, let's get into pulse rifles. And yeah, I'm freaking super excited. Let's do this. Alrighty, pulse rifles, let's get into this. Let me get my notes pulled up. All right, so first on the list, pulse rifles. These are going to have the biggest change in the final shape, right? So there's a 20% damage buff, and there's a 15% damage buff to red bar enemies. They really want people to use pulse rifles. Red Death is going to be our featured weapon. Pulse rifles have not been in the meta very reliably for PvE for a long time. So first on the list is going to be high impact frames. These are 340s. These I'm just picking one random gun in the archetype, so don't use this one example to be like, oh, but this and that, whatever. So we'll go with Relentless. So this is probably going to be one of the only times I say this, but for pulse rifles, it's really hard to get away from arrowhead break. And the reason for that is because it's literally a burst fire weapon, right? It's widowy, a burst fire weapon. So controlling the vertical recoil of the gun makes the gun feel better, right? There are other options, right? Like we just talked about, we're getting rid of damage mods. So people are, you know, you could argue, oh, well, counterbalance. I already did a comparison, as you can see here on screen. This is a fluted appendage mag with counterbalance, range masterwork. This is an arrowhead ricochet range backup mod. As you can see, right, trying to use counterbalance and appendage mag to get your rounds in the to get a higher magazine, you're gonna have more range on the one with arrowhead break. You're gonna have more stability, 5 less handling. You're gonna have a bigger magazine size, and you're gonna have a better recoil direction. So yes, for some of the slow firing archetypes like 340s, there's nothing wrong with running fluted appendage, or even just switching this to be ricochet rounds and a backup mag. I'll actually just do that for you right now. We go here, bam, bam, hit the compare. Oh, fluted, my bad. All right, hit the compare. Right, now this one's pretty much on par. This one actually has better stability, right? Better handling, same magazine size, and less recoil direction. So that's really where you would be suffering. But anything that does end in a 5 does have a cone size recoil direction, right? So this 65, it'll bounce to the right, it'll bounce to the left, you know, however you want the gun to feel. If you think, oh, I can control this, I don't see anything, oh, it's just PvE, what does it matter? This is a video where I'm talking about how to make your gun feel better. Arrowhead brake, unfortunately, for most of the pulse rifles I'm going to talk about, is pretty much the go-to. There's not too much room to play here with that in regards, and that's because it's 30 recoil direction, 10 handling, not 15, and fluted's only giving you 5 more handling plus some stability. If you are going to try to cap out your mag, you're like, oh, I don't really care for ricochet rounds, etc. You know, I might get it from my perk, or I might get like more stability and range from, you know, 3rd and 4th perk columns. The cap size for this is, right, if you hit appendage, you're at 42. You hit it extended, you're at 45. Is it really worth losing 20 reload speed or 3 extra bullets? And also, it's a pulse rifle, so it shoots in increments of 4. So 45 is actually really weird. I wouldn't recommend using it. So we're gonna pretty much solidify on this one, right? Arrowhead brake, ricochet rounds, appendage mags. If you don't even like that and you want a faster reload speed because you're not getting it from your 3rd and 4th, then you can use flared magwell. The reason I'm going a range masterwork on this is I like the flow of stats of a gun, right? So you see how we like progress from like handling the stability to range. If I just like try to overcap the stability here, I mean, it's still going to feel great. Stability is very important for a pulse rifle. I'm not saying you can't run it. These are like my top 2 perks for most pulse, is range and stability. But I just like the flow of it. It feels better for me. Play around with it. See what you like. All right, let's get into adaptive frames. So we're going to go with the adhortative. Nice. Same thing. So this is a 390. As we start to get higher up into rate of fires, the recoil can start to be really bad. And like I said, depending on the weapon, you might actually have a better base recoil direction. Use that information as you need. So we'll go arrowhead brake here. Ricochet rounds, real quick. So between ricochet, high cal, and armor piercing, right, just to understand the differences between them, the reason I go for ricochet is because it gives you more stability. But high caliber rounds will flinch targets harder. Definitely a highly sought after like PvP thing because it makes people harder to hit, but with all the like flinch changes, I could see people maybe like straying away from it. Armor piercing rounds is actually better for anti-barrier champions. This is why this is like important. If you had a pulse rifle, especially this season, you know, having anti-barrier rounds is going to make your pulse rifle just shred that shield even faster. So I'm not saying that these are bad options. Once again, I'm going for like the performance of the gun, but considering on the type of season and like the mods and stuff, you know, I might go on my crafted guns, switch ricochet rounds, and just put on some armor piercing rounds just to get that extra damage bonus. Same thing with the magazine size. So we'll go for range here. You can go for a +9, which gets you to 45. Adding appendage gets you to 48. Once again, is it really worth those 3? If you really wanted to like cap out your recoil direction, you could go appendage here, and then you could just go counterbalance, get that 100. You're like, oh, I got this smooth feeling gun. The stats on this is pretty balanced, as you'll see for the rest of like the remainder of guns. As you go from like the low fires to the high fires, the stats kind of like switch, right? So some have like way more range, medium stability and like lower handling than when you get to like a 390, like, or the middle archetype rate of fire. They kind of start to like balance out. And then when you get to the lower frames, right, you'll see like really high range. And I'm sorry, when you get to the higher rate of fires, you'll see like really low range, really like medium stability to high stability, and then decent handling. So with that being said, you know, you could balance these stats out as you want. I would probably go stability here just because you're not really going to kick a lot of range out of this thing anyway. And it's just going to help keep that recoil under lock. With that being said, let's go to next on the list is a lightweight frame. Let's go Chattering Bone. Like I said, right, this is a 450 lightweight frame. This also means you get to move faster with the weapon and superb handling. Like I said, as you get higher, you'll get better handling on guns. So this thing will just like whip out. We're sitting at 57 recoil direction. You can see how this is like slowly getting worse and worse. So even like arrowhead break is only getting us to like 87. Like I said, it's not mandatory to get up to 100, but like pulse rifles, like you got to get it something. You can't be rocking like a 30 recoil direction. That thing is just not going to feel good. As you'll notice with like different archetypes of weapons, you'll have different types of rounds you can choose. So you either get like high cal, armor piercing, or ricochet, or depending on the different archetype, you're only going to get like accurized rounds. So this is only going to give you, and steady rounds. Steady rounds is going to reduce the range. Like I talked about in PvE, right? If you want the gun to feel better, you know, you do not need to max out the range here. Like, how many raid encounters are you trying to shoot something that's light years away, right? Think about like planets on Nezareth. Everything's pretty close to you, right? If you're like one of the ad clear guys and you really want to play it safe, you know, you might be back far, but like the guys on the plates can also shoot down at that kind of stuff. You do not need to max out this range. I'm sorry for harping on this. I can't stress enough how, you know, you do not need to run like 100 range in PvE. It's absolutely ridiculous. So if you really wanted to, you could rock steady rounds with this. You could sort of make up for the range with a range masterwork here. And then once again, we're going to slap on a backup mag. You could do counterbalance, right? If you want to get to 100, it's just pulling a way that you don't like it pulling. And once again, backup mag also, it's very situational, because if you are someone who reloads a lot, the size of the magazine is like not really important to you. That kind of comes into more of a play of like a DPS weapon or something with like rewind rounds. But like, just as an example, not trying to go over perks, right? This gets rapid hit. You could really build into counterbalance here and take advantage of rapid hit, just basically helping you max out your reload speed. So it's like, do I really need a bigger mag, right? Think about these things, consider these things, please. All right, so lightweight frames, that covers that. Let's get into some aggressive burst frames. I love these things. All right, let's do Blast Furnace. This thing is a monster, man. This probably isn't the best to make an example of because it is so stat heavy. We're sitting at 65, so that bounce is, you know, gonna feel pretty solid. Once again, the one that I have on my dim, I got arrowhead break. That 95 is crisp. I do run accurized rounds, but that's mostly because, once again, I do run frenzy on this thing. But you know, if your gun doesn't have frenzy, you know, you might be suffering with reload speed. The range here is like really high, and also the stability is really high. This is one of those guns that has low handling. If you really wanted to, you could rock a handling masterwork just to like get it to feel a little bit better. But I will note that, you know, if you have something like frenzy, this is going to max out your handling speed anyway. But if you don't feel like running that, maybe you're like, oh, I like to run rampage with kinetic tremors, just consider either maybe bumping up your handling, just kind of like balance these stats out. It really just kind of makes the gun feel smoother. Other than that, if you're just not concerned with that at all, you can run stability. This is also a pretty like nice, right, like graph line, you know, diagram of like how I want my stats to look. All right, let's go. And then, oh, sorry, last but not least, backup mag puts this thing at 52. This thing is a monster. If you really wanted to go You could go appendage mag, which puts it at 60, but tac mag also puts it at 56 and also gives you a nice little stat bump here, a little reload speed, a little stability. So yeah. All right. We only have one legacy frame, which is a BXR. I'm only going to cover this because, you know, hopefully one day they start adding in a lot of other guns to these like very unique special archetypes. Like Drang Together Forever is literally the name of the archetype. The BXR, it's an absolute stat monster. I'm expecting it to just clear ads next season. It's got great perks. The roll I have on mine is a ricochet round, arrowhead break. Pretty sure I have range masterwork. BXR. Oh, I'm so sorry. That is not what I want. Here we go. Oh my god, please stop. There we go. Yeah, my BXR is a range masterwork, ricochet, arrowhead break. I mean, this thing is just a monster. The frame itself is just built so differently, and hip firing it feels good if that's something that you like to play into. I've mostly run major spec on mine for like the majority of the game, so being able to run backup mag is really huge. Once again, you could go fluted, slap and counterbalance. Sits at 85. It's not going to feel that much different. Really, anything over like 80, 85 is like a good spot. 100 is just like, you know, the cherry on top. But I mean, this thing, like, it's just gonna whip. You might not even notice the difference with fluted, but once again, we'll go back to arrowhead break. Just multiple options. And finally, for our last frame, rapid fire frames. Now, rapid fire frames are, for all archetypes, built differently. We're gonna go Oversoul Edict here. You're not gonna get a lot of range, and it's gonna be hard to control if you do not build into it. Once again, arrowhead break, these things have absolutely terrible recoil direction. The thing about rapid fires is they do get a faster reload speed when the magazine is empty. So if you really wanted to, you could play into counterbalance to like really cap this thing off. And stability here is actually more important than range, because like I said before, stability matters with like reticle bounce. And flinch resistance. Like, you don't want to be getting tossed around with this thing. So I would opt in for a stability masterwork for this type of archetype. Maybe for you this is just overkill. You could play into range, but these stats are pretty bad, and the sacrifice is that you're constantly shooting, right? If you start to play around with perks, kill activated perks for these guns, right? That means you're not using the rapid fire frame. So if you really want to, you could build into a reload speed masterwork just to get like that chain of, you know, hey, shoot, kill something, reload, and then volt shot procs, right? Wipes a bunch of ads, reload. You could really build into reload speed. It's like something I had on my forbearance, because, right, you were like shooting it, chain reaction, reload. The rest of the stats were like maxed out from the barrel, something we'll go over. Backup mag for pulse rifles does give a lot of bullets, but like I don't ever find myself shooting it long enough without reloading. I run around constantly with my guns just reloaded. I don't like to be in a situation where I've got like no ammo or, you know, something like that. And once again, this is all about consistency. Stability is going to make these rapid fires feel a lot better. If you have any comments on pulse rifles, or you don't agree with me, or you're like, I really just don't understand what you said, please comment on this. I'll get back to you as fast as I can. But next up on the list is auto rifles. Alrighty, I just realized I didn't even have my light on, so I was probably dark in the last video, but it is whatever. Auto rifles. High impact frame, first on the list. We're gonna go with, let's go lethal abundance. So these high impact frames, they're gonna hit like a truck, and they're gonna hit pretty far. They're really good in Crucible. For PvE, in order to get the gun to feel better, or just balance it out, You definitely do not need to build into range, almost like whatsoever. If you really want to, you could go something with like hammer forged rifling. I'm not telling you what to do, just giving you advice. Small bore is really going to be a huge play here, but to help with the stability, you could just go polygon rifling and try to get that 10 stability bump. You're not really going to get that from anything else. I'm gonna go ricochet rounds here again. You could go high cal. It will stagger some enemies. In terms of like higher end content, I'll try to see if I can get a video out about like staggering enemies better. But to be completely honest with you, like there isn't like a stagger enemies build where they're like, oh, you know, this isn't like a ARPG where you can like stun an enemy and get free damage off, or you know, a bunch of time. We have different abilities to make use of that, which is kind of why I don't really lean into it as well. The magazine size for this is 32. It is a slow fire weapon. You will probably most likely end up killing the thing that, you know, in not that many rounds before you end up reloading anyway. You're not going to just like be dumping a 64 round mag of a high impact gun. Masterwork here, I prefer stability over range. Once again, you know, this starts to really like balance the gun out. You could also go fluted here if you just want a little bit better handling, and then you could go counterbalance here just to try to get better recoil. Auto rifles kind of feel like a cone. It feels like you're shooting in like a circle rather than like a bouncing up and down and like losing your shots, in my opinion. So you could go counterbalance here. Once again, you have to make the decision of the play of like, oh, I want to run backup mag, or I want to run some kind of perk that's going to give me faster reload speed. So yeah, precision frames next. Gonna try to cruise through some of these only because we've covered a lot of like the reasons of like what I'm looking for. 450 auto rifles have good recoil direction. I really like fluted here. It starts to like balance the gun out as we get into like the middle archetype. You could go small bore. Sorry, excuse me. Could go small bore here. Hit another same thing, stability, range masterwork, something like that. Ricochet rounds. If you want to get the mag higher, you can go appendage mag. The range or the mag cap, right? You're looking at 40 on extended, 38 run backup mag with it. You get up to 44 if you wanted to stack. Once again, I would not go extended mag. I would rather go appendage, and then a backup mag on top of that. Or you could go counterbalance, recoil direction. Really just kind of like smooths the stat outs here. Next up, adaptive frames. The summoner will do regular. These are really nice auto rifles. They really feel like they lock on. I know like specifically recoil direction for this is like bad, but the handling and the stability you can really like build into it. I'm sorry I don't have like gameplay to show you of like each single archetype. Like I said, this was always meant to be like a podcast style thing. We'll get into more gameplay stuff as more new weapons come out by like sets. I like to go small bore here just to get the stats balance. Run a stability masterwork, ricochet rounds. You see how this thing really just like pulls into its stats. I do run counterbalance on these things because as you get into a higher archetype, it really starts to like dip that recoil direction, or higher rate of fire, I'm sorry. You could even go arrowhead here, and that really like linearly like smooths out the gun, and everything just kind of like ADS comes out. Stability is great. You got decent range. You'll be all right. And last but not least, we have the rapid fire frame. There is a precision frame on here. I just want to note actually real quick, but I'm pretty sure it's like, no, I'm sorry, we did cover that. I'm sorry, I could have swore there was one on here that was different. I think that's a different gun. All right, so Rufus's Fury. This is like the pinnacle of rapid fire frames for me. I use this thing a lot. If you have one, I'm sure you know just how great it feels. This is the same thing, right? We're seeing this like high increase of stability with like decent range and decent handling. This gun has a lot of perks where you can like overfill the magazine. There are a couple other rapid fire frames that do this. They actually have deeper ammo reserves, so you're sitting at 54 mag, and it's just faster when you empty the entire mag. That's kind of the benefit of like shooting all your shots really fast. Nice. The recoil here is terrible. I would run arrowhead break just to bump that up, because counterbalance really isn't going to help you. You could go backup mag here if you really wanted to like pump it out. If you wanted to do like backup mag reconstruction or rewind rounds, if you really want to just lay on the trigger forever. Ricochet rounds, I think if you are going to go backup mag over like counterbalance, there's really no need to run another mag thing. Like, you're just going to overkill this. This is like, unless you're using this auto rifle for DPS, please just like stop. You don't got to use it that much. I would go range masterwork here specifically for this gun, because the stability already is like close to 70. It's really going to file out, but you could go stability and this thing will just laser on to whatever you want to target down. And that is our last frame. So next on the list is scout rifles. Scout rifles, baby. We got aggressive frames coming up first. These are going to be our 120s. Oh, these are just going to be the lever actions. So the lever actions are all kind of meant to be a hipfire weapon. A lot of them, if not all of them, have the text balance stock, which increases like your range and stuff like that. I like this archetype a lot and I want it to be great, but the dead man's tail just kind of like nerfs the legendaries, because the legendaries just don't feel as good or can get like something super crazy. I did hunt for a roll of the prophet. I was trying to go for like a hip fire grip, offhand strike combo, rapid hit, something to like really help build the stability. And because it is a scout rifle, I built into range. I guess maybe something I didn't say earlier, which I apologize for, is range also has a lot to do with like bullet magnetism. Essentially, like the further the bullet travels, the more it like stays on target, which is why if you like, you know, take a weapon and you look at a fallen in a public space that's 3,000 light years away and your cursor's on its head and you shoot it and you get a body shot, like it's because the bullet magnetism just like at a certain point it just basically started like spiraling and it's just not going to hit the crit. With this one specifically, I actually do like hammer forged rifling here, if that's something you get. Small bore or corkscrew rifling, like I said, you're basically trying to choose what the better of the two options is. Since this isn't a crafted weapon, you don't really have a choice in the matter. I would prefer small bore because you do want to get a good stability bump. You could go accurized rounds. I don't really feel the need to put more shots in this thing because of the way it reloads. Like even having like an extra 5 bullets, there's nothing that's gonna like refund you ammo. Enlighten action, keep away, rapid hit, right? These are actually usually most common on these weapons. I think rapid hit might actually be on like most of them except for the ritual weapon. So you are going to be able to like boost your stats in other ways. You could go the stability to really like keep it linear. I don't think you really need to push over like 80 range. I mean, unless you're trying to use it in like a GM and like snipe people with it, that is a possibility. But also if you are trying to go for like a hip fire-esque thing, you could also go for like a fluted barrel, just so it like whips out faster. If you really want to feel that like Texas like ranger, like yeehaw, you know, I'm gonna shoot this thing, hip fire it. And also you could just run backup mag. Once again, I'm sorry to keep using this. Chris Proctor talked about them adding more mods into the future to like really help you get a weapon to feel different compared to like other people's weapons, and I'm really hoping that update comes sooner than later, because I would love to make another video of us going over like maybe a specific weapon of each archetype and the things that you can add. Sorry for getting off track. I'm just deeply in love with this game and all this stuff. So yeah, so that's lever actions. Oh, I'm sorry, you could actually put freehand grip on this thing, which also helps with the ready multiplier, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, the hip fire accuracy cone by 30%. So kind of how I talked about that bullet magnetism, it's really going to help like hone in on hip firing from long ranges. All right, high impact frames is next. 150s. Let's do transfiguration. So these are like slow firing, you know, obviously they're faster than 120s, but like they really kind of feel sluggish compared to other, like they're really chunky, like almost like sniper rifle, which are like boof, boof, boof. It's it is what it is. I still opted for small bore on this just because the range is so high and the stability is like so bad. Fluted is not a terrible option. Honestly, either is arrowhead break here. Hammer forge way over the top. Polygon rifling is probably something you want. Once again, you know, this thing has like rapid hit, for instance, so you could like get around like needing to boost your stability. I would go steady rounds on this because it just has so much range that like you can really nerf it by 5. And if you're really upset about it, you know, getting this one specifically down to like 69, you could just put a range masterwork on it, bump it up. Backup mag, same thing, or we're gonna do counterbalance. If you are trying to go for like some super high scout rifle thing, you know, like I said, see how tac mag only gets to add 1. This one adds 2, and if we do extended, it's 20. It's 3 shots. It is not worth sacrificing the stats. You want this weapon to feel better. Next up on the list is a precision frame. Let's do, I really don't want to cover Hung Jury because it's the 18th time they brought this weapon back. Doom of Chelchis. This is my favorite scout rifle in the game, mostly because of the perks that it gets, but other than that fact, I'm pretty sure I end up putting arrowhead break on this thing, just because your recoil direction is really starting to get a little wonky. Small bore is another great option. I actually did go accurized rounds on this because it doesn't have as much range. And then I end up going with a stability masterwork, just kind of evening this thing's stats out. The origin perk for this specifically lets you reload more ammo when near allies. So actually putting the backup mag here would get you a nice little bump. Could go counterbalance if you're really feeling something, but arrowhead break, accurized rounds, a backup mag, stability masterwork. This thing's gonna feel great in your hands. Let's do lightweights next. I actually don't think there's a lot in this archetype that I really like. As you can already see here, there's like basically none that are like currently available. I do have a tarnished metal. I'll go over this one. I have like a volt shot roll on this, so I was going for a high reload. It already has good reload, great handling. Really, the range, I know we just kind of talked about the bullet magnetism, but the range of scouts is also tied to like zoom. And because they have high zoom, you don't need to build into a lot of range. Like if you had a sniper rifle that had 20 range, right, like it's still a sniper rifle. It still acts the way that it's supposed to be, not just because the range is like lesser. Your sniper bullet's not just going to disappear. So for this one, I also went with arrowhead break because the recoil here is just starting to get really sloppy. Ricochet rounds, no, I'm sorry, steady rounds. Yeah, so I really, like I said, you really don't have to build into it. Hit that range masterwork, get rid of that steady rounds increase. But steady rounds is a really phenomenal perk, and I think a lot of people don't use it because it does take out range. But this thing's really gonna just like lock on. Go back to backup mag or counterbalance. There it is again. God, they need more mods, man. All right, rapid fire frame. Bang of year. As you can see, right, most of these rapid fire archetypes literally have this medium stability, whatever range, whatever handling, like it's consistent. So when you're really thinking about how you want to build into it, especially with like a rapid fire frame, it's usually always the same thing. Like I said, I'm always going to go for arrowhead break. It's just terrible recoil direction. Fluted isn't like the worst option if you want to go counterbalance, but like even 64 is just kind of like, it's so low. Backup mag, we went with ricochet rounds. So this is, I think, the only scout rifle archetype where you can start to get high cal, anti-barrier, ricochet rounds. I think we have unstoppable scout rifle this season. Nothing really that you're going to be able to like boost damage on an unstop like that. Last that I checked. I actually went for stability here, no surprise, because it is a rapid fire and you want to slow down that like bounce, kind of keep it under lock. There's one more archetype here that is actually, I think there's only a few. Yeah, there's only 2 right now, but like I said, I will cover every weapon. These Vice Stinger scout rifles, these are actually a little bit more prominent in PvE just because of like how fast they are and how they feel. I basically went for the same thing here. Arrowhead break, accurized rounds. If you really wanted to, you go steady rounds, range masterwork, really keep this thing like just snipered in, like the Vice Stingers make some like weird noise, almost like you're shooting like snake venom at people. It's like backup mag, great choice here. Don't really need counterbalance. 83 is like not the worst thing in the world. That wraps it up for scout rifles. Actually, next on the list is hand cannons. Let's get into some hand cannons. Hand cannons. All right, first on the list, 120s. This is what I was talking about with the igneous hammer. And you know what? That is the gun we're going to cover. So 120s. These are primarily a PvP weapon, and it's because they hit hard, they hit like a truck. There are 120s that you can use in PvE. The problem with it is that the 140s just kind of like, they feel a lot better. It's like a lot more consistent in landing shots. The problem with the 120 is like the second you miss a shot, you're just like, oh, like it feels like you just lost like 1/8 of your mag to thin air. With that being said, if I was to build a PvE aggressive 120, I think for hand cannons, it's really hard to overlook small bore. Hammer Forge is only giving you 3 more range, but this is giving you 7 more stability. If you really felt like you just didn't care about range, please opt in for polygon rifling. But once again, I could kind of make the same argument that, right, that 7 stability isn't that much different than that 10 stability. It's only 3 more. Masterwork, either range or stability. Range, once again, is just going to kind of like even the flow out, but you can still build it in with stability. I like ricochet rounds on this a lot. It just continues to just keep this stack going. Like I said earlier, 120s are kind of like hard to pull out. You could run fluted barrel. That's not the end of the world. Like, look at the difference in the stats here between small bore and fluted. You're literally losing a little bit of range, but you're gaining so much more handling in the background. These are also, these are like 8-round mags. These are absolutely terrible. Like, backup mag, please, for the love of God. And even if you're just like really in love with these things and it's not working, add on an appendage, get to like 13. Like, this is basically like what most 140s get to with just a backup mag, like 13, 14 shots, which is why 120s are just kind of like falling behind in PvE. Most of these hand cannons are going to have great recoil direction, so that's not something I'm going to need to cover. All right, let's get into adaptives. These are what I'm talking about. Midnight Coupe. This thing is an absolute monster. I got one, the exact one I wanted. The roll that I wanted the most was small bore accurized rounds, just because I knew I was going to tack on backup mag and I had a range masterwork. These things just feel great. There's nothing wrong with the stability masterwork here, but I think you'll find that the way the reticle bounces, it just feels like you're locking on to like each shot. Like, if you pace your hand cannon shots, it's just like shoot, bounce, shoot, bounce, shoot, bounce, versus something like a 180. When we get into that, I hate 180s because they have such a little recoil that it makes me feel like I could just hold down the trigger, and then every now and then I start missing headshots because I'm like not timing the bounce right because there's such little bounce. So yeah, like I said, you could go Hammer Forge here. You still have great stability. you could play around with this, but really like none of this is going to feel bad. Fluted would be like a little overkill, but like I said, if that's like you want to whip it out, I mean 15 handling on top of that, I mean this is just overkill right here. There is one 140 that's actually a lightweight frame, and that is the Rose. This is actually not the worst PvE weapon, and that's because it has explosive payload and rapid hit. The other thing that's really awesome about the Rose, and I wish they would do this with more guns that aren't just like comp or, you know, these like these one-off weapons, is you actually get more stats from the grip. And this is where this thing becomes an absolute monster. 7 range, 7 stability. We go small bore. We go accurized rounds here. Range masterwork, because your stability is already like so good that you could really build in a range, but if you want, you could build into stability. This is like a really nice balanced roll here. But then we get into the handles, right? You could get more handling if you wanted to. You could just get a +5 stability, +5 handling. You could just get 10 handling. This is usually something I opt in for because it's just a straight stat bump without anything like negative. You see here we got -10 handling. Or if you really want the recoil direction, right? No counterbalance needed. Bam, 5 recoil direction. We run like this, run backup mag. We're sitting at a nice 14. It actually is not the worst PvP oriented weapon that would not feel good in a PvE setting. Very, very good job on this hand cannon Bungie did. Last but not least, no, I'm sorry, second to last is the precision frame. These are 180s, and man, you either love them or you hate them. If you play this game enough, you know exactly what I'm talking about. As you can see here, these things have such high stability but such low range. This is the one time I would say go into Hammerforge, go into range, maybe even go into Accurize. Like, it's already stable, and the like recoil of it is just so little. I mean, look at this. You have 100 recoil direction, just base. It's nuts. Backup mag, unfortunately, once again, I don't really think that there's any. You could go targeting adjuster, but that would be, who am I to say that'd be crazy in PvE? But you're not going to need it. You're just going to need to get better aim. If you don't like the handling of this thing, throw on fluted. Reload speed's okay. You could go flared magwell here. This whole stat, you know, orientation to this, it just like play around with it, see what best fits you. But you know, a lot of the things I'm going to recommend are not nerfing your stats unless you have a way to make up for them, right? Extended barrel didn't even do anything compared to full bore, but I'm losing range. And the other thing too is it'll give you a little bit of recoil direction, but this thing's already at 100, so there's literally no point in even running it. All right, I'm going to cover the first adept weapon all night, and that is going to be the Warden's Law. We're supposed to be getting 2 more of these. The one that is unconfirmed or like not even talked about, I'm expecting it to be like kind of awesome because we haven't seen anything about it. The stasis one we're getting in final shape looks good. It's actually weird because the Warden's Law feels so heavy, like when you shoot it, it like chunky, but like in the demo of stasis one, it actually kind of felt like a lightweight 2 burst. Like it looked a lot easier to like handle, I guess. These are technically like 120 archetypes that just shoot twice. So when you're really building into it for PvE, you can easily do small bore. Once again, this thing is just small bore on hand cannons is just like top tier. If I had to rank any barrel, it would be small bore. We can go accurized rounds. Now this is the only heavy burst right now, so I'm gonna kind of talk a little bit about the perk combos that you can get with this thing. Extended mag is something a lot of people use on this thing because you want to max out its magazine size in order to get like 4 times the charm just cooked on this thing with Lucky Pants. Now, if we sit at 16, right, and extended gives us 6 and backup mag gives us 6, would you look at that? We didn't even need to nerf our reload speed just to get the maximum magazine size. This is the best part about removing these mods in final shape. It's so much better build crafting. Nobody's just locked to like magazine perks for damage and then a damage modifier on top of that. Outside of that, if you are having trouble with this thing, sacrifice your range, go into steady rounds. You still have the range masterwork, which I didn't add. This thing is just a laser. Recoil off the charts here. And yeah, that covers it. Next is gonna be sidearms. Let's get into some sidearms. And sidearms, let's get back into it. So first up on the list, we've got precision frames. Alrighty, we're gonna go with the Boudica C. All right, so these are gonna be predominantly higher range, decent stability, lower handling, almost like the 120 equivalent of a sidearm. There's not too many in this archetype. We got Swift Verdict, which just got taken away. Everything else is sunset. So hopefully we get some more of these going into the final shape. I hate to see a weapon archetype with only like 4 guns in it. Really small board, just kind of like keeps that little curvature of like our handling, our stability, our range. Nothing's like too high, everything's kind of smooth. You could also go fluted if you think you're perfectly fine with range. Hit that stability masterwork. You know, it's still got, it's actually like a more compensated like curve of its stats. And then really the only thing we got going here is backup mag. Sidearms have really good recoil direction, 98. You're just not going to beat that. And with ricochet rounds, you're basically hitting 68, 68, 48. This is going to feel like a pretty good weapon if you just really want to max out that range. I don't really think 7's going to make a huge difference on something that already has like a base, right? Like 65, 63. So yeah, next on the list, we've got adaptive frames. Oh, I'm sorry, that was adapted frames. Precision, no, it was not. Yeah, all right, adaptive frames, buzzard. I'm actually going to do Allied Demand here. This just got reworked in Iron Banner, and I absolutely love it. I'm pretty sure P-Spawn's also in this group. P-Spawn's actually a burst fire, but Allied Demand is a single shot. Personally, for this thing, I actually did go Hammerforge rifling because it's just so low range on this like specific archetype. It's gonna like have very high stability to the point where I don't even really feel like building into it. Ricochet rounds, get that range even up more, and then throwing on top of that a range masterwork. Like this thing is gonna, usually I don't push for range like we talked about. But when something has such high stability, and if you have like around 50 handling, like you're not really gonna notice the difference in PvE. I'm pretty much okay with settling on like going for max range, but once again, if I got like a fluted roll, I would not be upset by this, right? Like the 10 range is not gonna make or break my determining whether this gun is actually going to be useful or not. This is actually good in PvE, just as like a side note. Under over is a really good anti-barrier tool. I mean, it was mostly this season. We're not really going to have it next season, but this was a really fun sidearm to use, even in PvE. Next on the list is basically just Drang. It is the only Together Forever. This thing is craftable. I don't want to like beat a dead horse or anything. Small bore, accurized rounds. You want to bump up your mag, no problem going with like appendage mag, hit it to like 21. Range masterwork, same thing. The base stability of this thing was just so good. It wouldn't even hurt if you really wanted to go polygon rifling. This thing, like, it just feels really, really good. Next on the list is aggressive burst. This is gonna be, we'll do Ligma Vigil, however you want to pronounce that. So these are heavy 2 burst, hard hitting sidearms. Unfortunately for this one, which I wanted to be better than it is, the problem is specifically these like Tex guns feel like they're all supposed to be shot hip firing, but they didn't really give you anything to like hip fire it with. There was no like hip fire grip, offhand strike, you know, just things like that. This thing does feel good. Ricochet rounds, I'm beating a dead horse with this, but like, unless if you want a mag perk or you just don't feel like you need ricochet rounds, please just ignore all the ricochet rounds comments I make and just build into a mag size if you want to run counterbalance. But I just don't, these things sit at like 90 plus recoil direction. Like there's no reason you're not running backup mag. Like this thing holds 32, like that's a lot for a 2-burst sidearm. That's 16 shots. Whatever you're shooting is going to be dead. Small bore, or once again, you could go fluted. Corkscrew doesn't hurt here either, just like a bonus to everything. But small bore is really the move here. Stability wouldn't hurt either as a masterwork instead of range. 80 is actually probably too high for this thing. Because it is a burst, I would care a little bit more about the stability than I would the range at all, which is why I said you could go polygon. And 63 is still like a respectable for a sidearm. That does it for aggressive burst. Those are 325s. And next on the list is lightweight. Heliocentric, the sidearm of the season. This thing, like, between this and Mikkel's Reverence, this sidearm really just like brought me back into like the sidearm game, even for like high-end PvE content. Because like, obviously for this one specifically, the heel clip incandescent is just really good this season, but I wasn't expecting these things to hit as hard as they did. And if we actually go to the twid from a couple weeks ago, right? Sidearms, trace rifles, scout rifles, and bows, 20% damage increase against red bar enemies. That's huge, because like I already felt like these things actually did good damage against a major, like in terms of just like I'm out of special or something like that. But I actually did find it in harder end content like annoying that I was kind of like 3 or 4 shooting, like 3 or 4 shots would essentially kill a major. I'm sorry, a red bar, but like a hand cannon was like 2 headshotting, right? It was like for the RPM, you would think it would kind of like ramp up, maybe even 5, but with the 20% increase, like if you could land a solid 3 tap with like one of the higher sidearms, like 325, 360, 450, I'm sorry, like 260, 300 to 325, it would be really nice if they were like 2 tapping red bars, or like you were just slaughtering. So back to heliocentric. Basically, I like a lot of different barrels for this. We got small bore, we got fluted, we got hammer forged, and we got polygon. Because it's already so low range and it's not super high stability, trying to like make up for the range kind of feels like detrimental to the other stats. Not to mention specifically, right, we didn't really touch on origin traits a lot, but if you know your origin traits, like Nadir Focus is something that literally increases the range of the gun as you go, which is why this thing isn't sitting at like 65, because you would just be at 100 basically all the time. So I do like accurized rounds for this. I do like small bore between hand cannons and sidearms. This is kind of like how I usually look at things. I don't think going an extra range would be nice, the stability, because this thing does kind of have like kickback, but it does also feel like even though it's kicking back, you're still like landing your shots. But you could go range 54, 53. It's not bad. Backup mag. I will say you do reload this thing a lot. So if you didn't want to run backup mag, you could actually run freehand grip. Freehand grip. Let me take a drink. Hip firing a sidearm is not like the worst feeling thing in the world. Between that and like submachine guns, you could get away with it if you didn't want to do backup mag. Just play around with it, see what feels best for you. Next on the list, probably hands down my favorite sidearm in the entire game is Mikkel's Reverence. I got an adept one of these with the we-wind frenzy roll, and I love this thing. Small bore ricochet. This is actually probably like too much stability, but because I have the adept one specifically, I went with, I don't know if I was lucky enough to get the range masterwork. I might have gotten stability, but then I just threw on an adept range mod because, like I said before, this like +3 adept mag but -15 handling, like is that really worth it? In my opinion, like no, not at all. I'd rather run a stat mod, and if I really wanted a magazine size, you could just go literally regular backup mag, which for whatever reason does the same thing, unless 18's the cap. 18 is the cap. So here's the first prime example of like hitting a range cap, right? Backup mag adds 3 with no penalties. Adept backup mag adds 3 with -15 handling. Like there's no reason to use it. And even appendage mag adds 3. Extended mag adds 3. Like you really need to look into like what mags you're using, because if you're just someone who's slapping on like alloy mag for a 0.85 reload modifier on a rapid fire gun that already has a 0.85 when the mag's empty, like this is usually a gun I will empty the clip on, just because it is a rapid fire, so you're getting it off faster, and I run rewind, so usually I just kind of let it do its thing unless I'm out of combat, and then I'm reloading anyway. So basically my final verdict, the one I have crafted, you could also go hammer forge here just because it's such high stability. Hammer forge, ricochet, range masterwork, or stability, but this thing's pretty like locked on for me. You'd be surprised the range that I could hit things at. And then I just run backup mag, 96 recoil, and that, nope, one more. Let's do, so this is a very unique sidearm frame. We got the Sununa SI6 in season 20. I think I might have used this one time, but the perk pool for this was so bad that like it wasn't even worth getting this stasis sidearm. And the last time we seen something was the Vision. This thing was actually super cool in my opinion. Like I really liked the way it looked. Same thing though, like PvE wise, the perk pool was just absolutely terrible. There's nothing here that like really appeals to me for a sidearm. And the last one before that was The Last Dance. This thing was like a menace in PvP. Like I actually really enjoyed this for PvP. But this one did have sights and not mags. I'm not really going to cover sights because they're super like niche, right? The Judgment has sights. Maybe I'll do like a little bit more of a breakdown in the future if they start coming out with like more guns in the final shape that have sights, and we can actually go over it. I kind of want to just let you know that this archetype does exist. If there is actually one person in the world that really wants to use the Suna SI6, here's my quick little review. This thing has way too much stability. You're easily putting on hammer forge here because it's so low range. Ricochet, just to get that 5 range. You could go high cal, but that's more of like for PvP, which this thing has no good rolls for whatsoever. You're going range masterwork here to try to compensate for something. If you actually are like a diehard, like I want this thing to be like glued to people's heads because it is a 3-round burst, I would probably go polygon, stick with the 45 range, and then slap on recoil direction to get to 9. God, that's a shame. It's 84 and counterbalance only gets it to 99. Oh, that sucks. But I mean, hey, you could go arrowhead, swap off the range masterwork for stability, still get that 100, and then put on backup mag. That's probably like a solid workaround, but this thing does feel good. I just wish it had better rolls. And next on the list, I'm actually going to cover rocket sidearms right now. So there's only one. I've seen the Strand one coming in final shape. Absolutely love it. And there's a solar one that we haven't seen. If that thing gets like heel clip incandescent, it's just going to be insane. Why can I not find this? All right, there is not a different category. Oh, it's just a different frame. All right, cool. So Indebted Kindness, this is kind of where I'm gonna get like a little bit more into kind of how grenade launchers and rockets and rocket sidearms work. So eventually I'm gonna get a video out. Maybe we'll go over some specifics to like impact damage versus explosive damage. But in my opinion, from all the experience that I have, right, Blast radius is not useful for any single target damage, right? Like blast radius is like how big of an effect you're getting off. There's been an argument like the bigger the boss, the more damage you do because the blast radius, but like if you're hitting a boss directly, right, and you get the velocity impact, and then the blast radius is immediate, it happens right away. It's not like the blast radius is missing the boss. This would be like if you whiffed a shot and you hit the floor and the blast radius isn't large enough to even like connect with the boss, but that's just like a skill issue. So for most of these, I just basically highly build into velocity. Now, depending on the perks, which is super important here, you need to consider whether you want to build into reload speed. For instance, Indebted Kindness, the two roles that the one role I was looking for, but the one role I got was Enlightened Volt Shot. This has been my favorite version of it. I know for harder end content, people really like Lead from Gold just because you're only running heavy ammo scav. So if you're not getting any special bricks, it doesn't matter because you're still picking up special on heavy ammo pickup. And 4 bricks gives you back all your ammo. These are probably like the two roles that were most seen. With Enlightened Action, I felt as though I didn't care to build into reload whatsoever. If you had got Impulse Amplifier, this one's actually a lot dirtier than people think because Enlightened Action takes time to like build up, and you're building up like a you're building up like a stream of stacks that like deprecate over time, but like you need 12 hits to get to 50 handling, 50 reload speed. The handling's not really doing anything for you, versus having Impulse Amplifier, which is already 20, and then it also is a 0.85 reload duration, because this thing's technically considered like a rocket launcher, right? It's a rocket sidearm. So this would have probably been the better role for me to get versus Enlightened Action. It also increases the projectile velocity by 35%, which is just like a bonus for anything trying to move too fast. I know, I realized I just said I wouldn't cover perks in this video, but this is the only rocket sidearm. So the reason I want this to be known is, let's say you did go Lead from Gold. This is what I talk about where like, how do I know which barrel's good? It does depend on the third and fourth column, but you need to know what these things do. If I had Lead from Gold, I'm easily going like Flared Magwell here. Alloy magazine's probably not like the worst thing in the world, but I'm easily going Flared Magwell because to proc Volt Shot, it's a kill activated perk. I don't want this thing to be terrible in reload speed. Like, it would just take too long and it would just not feel that good. I want this thing to have like some decent like click click clack bang bang time, you know what I'm saying? Hard launch here does reduce your blast radius, but like I just said, velocity is all impact damage and we want impact damage. I also opted in for the velocity masterwork, so you're sitting at like a nice 81. Let's say you had the Enlightened Action roll or the Impulse Amplifier. What would I use if I didn't need to increase my reload speed, right? High velocity rounds looks good, but implosion rounds does the same thing but lowers the blast radius, and we've seen that that does more damage when the blast radius is lower and the velocity is higher. I wish I had a video, maybe when the next two rocket sidearms come out, I'll compare like all three of them, but I also have to get like, well, I guess the Strand one will be craftable, so I'll be able to do like a pretty hard in-depth breakdown on the damage split. But if you get high velocity or you get implosion, either one of them is going to be perfect. Velocity masterwork, hard launch. And then you could actually go target acquisition here, just because backup mag, if you are using it as a kill activated weapon, you're going to basically be reloading at the top of the mag anyway. But you could go backup mag if you want the 3 extra shots. Be my guest. All right, and next on the list is my favorite type of gun, submachine guns. So let's get into that. All right, submachine guns. Let's get into it. First archetype that is going to come up is 600s, which are precision frames. Let's do, nope, that was adaptive. we'll go Unending Tempest. So 600s are usually known to have high range and like a downscaling thing. It's the same thing, right? We've gone through this a million times. 120 hand cannons, high range, decent stability, low handling. The lower RPMs are going to have this groove for like primary weapons for the most part. In terms of this, because of the way this archetype actually works, range is something that I would build into. Fluted accurized rounds is a very solid balance to this weapon. Range masterwork. You could go stability, but I mean, it depends really on the stat profile of the 600 and then also the origin trait, right? This nadir focus for this thing specifically increases the range the longer you shoot it. You can also go hammer forged here. And I mean, you could even go a handling masterwork, to be honest. I just don't think you need this much range. But it is there. These do feel better with a little bit more range. Stability does matter on SMGs now. Before, it kind of felt like it didn't. Like if you had a mouse and keyboard, stability was basically a non-issue for you. But this is also going to come down to what perks you use. Something like Frenzy is going to max out your handling anyway. I'd probably just stick with Fluted, honestly, and the range masterwork or stability. It just kind of keeps it nice and even. Mods, backup mag for sure. Submachine guns kind of feel like, oh, I only have 3 extra bullets with backup mag, but it kind of feels like you run through the magazine like pretty fast with submachine guns, in my opinion. And if you do not have high reload for consistency, it kind of starts to like feel like it's detrimental to your build versus like helping your build. Next is going to be aggressive frames. These are probably my favorite. One of the roles I really liked for PvE, we'll go with the Unforgiven. Now 720s usually have high range, high handling, and not so good stability. Some way worse than others. Their reload speed's also not the best. If I was going to build any 720 out, regardless of what my third and fourth column perks are, I usually always want ricochet rounds and either fluted with a range masterwork. You get this nice like U curve between the stats. It just kind of like really balances the weapon out. Or you can go hammer forged with a handling masterwork, and same thing, you get that like curvature. If I got small bore, I would not be upset whatsoever. Small, like stability does matter now, where it kind of felt like it didn't used to matter. Yeah, like I said, the reload speed is not good on this. I use this example because the origin trait was supposed to like increase your reload stat buff, but like you have to be almost dead, right? It says 20 damage per stack, so you have to be below half health to get to 71, and I feel like I don't even really notice the difference, if I'm being honest. Sorry, I kind of have like the hiccups. It's just something to keep in mind. Frenzy on a 720 feels really good, or even something like Threat Detector. I'll actually pull up a No Survivors. I liked No Survivor 720 with basically fluted, ricochet, range. It's actually got way too much handling. And I ran Surplus with Incandescent for PvE. This thing, once you get this going, the stats come up a lot. If you are going to build into like a Surplus thing, you see how high this handling is compared to the range. We can now start to make that sacrifice to go into Hammer Forge, because now Surplus is going to give us 100 handling anyway, plus that stability bump. I mean, just look at this thing. Like on paper, this is going to feel awesome, especially if you were on Prismatic. Like the chances of you having 3 abilities at any given time are probably, you know, 80%, 90%. You're going to have a lot of your abilities back constantly. 720s are probably not the strongest in PvE, and really what that has to come down to is the magazine size and the damage per second. So because this is a 720, 900s feel better because you're putting out more shots, and those shots are doing like a little less than a 720 would, So it's just a higher like DPS. That's not to say if you love 720s and you want to use them, don't use them, but that's kind of why their like usage rate isn't as high as like a 900. And speaking of, let's get into adaptive 900s first. We'll go Parabellum. This was a really good gun this season. I didn't get to use it because I never got the roll I was looking for. I wanted a heel clip frenzy, or if I did get it, I just got it like way too late. These are pretty balanced like stats. These look like 720s, but they shoot 900. That's kind of like, if you pick one of these up, you're like, oh, I got a 720. Why are its stats so weird? Like, make sure you're paying attention. For this one, I did the same thing. A lot of these are probably going to be fluted or hammer forged. Fluted just makes submachine guns feel better. This origin perk specifically, field tested. Oh, I can't bump the stats on it right now, but it gives you like a bunch of benefits. Basically, the longer you use the gun without dying, and even if you stow it, you still get all these crazy stat bumps. Definitely one of the best in the game in terms of like origin traits, and this will allow you to kind of like really play around with your stats. If I had a hammer forged accurize, or like probably small bore accurize, even I think that's probably too much range, I wouldn't be against going flared mag on something like this. Accurize rounds or flare mag was basically my two top options, and then you could go fluted with a range masterwork, backup mag. It's just a really balanced SMG. It's not gonna be the greatest in the world. Like, I still think a regular lightweight 900 is gonna feel better because the reload speed's gonna be like inherently better. But yeah, that's pretty much like the two. Corkscrew would be like a fallback. If you got corkscrew, I also wouldn't be upset here. All right, so now let's do lightweights. These are some of the best submachine guns in the game. Recluse, as it has come back in its new form, to me, kind of lacks. It doesn't feel like the OG one, and that's kind of because of like the damage nerf. Multi-mock feels really good. There was a really good roll multi-mock. I had a under over frenzy roll. Once again, under over was doing, actually we have anti-barrier submachine gun next season, and under over is just going to do 50% even more damage if you dare to take a submachine gun into a GM. But hey, we're here for it. So same thing, as you can see the curve of these guns, the lightweights, the handling is always like through the roof. So you really could push into a hammer forge roll with or a small bore, I'm sorry, with accurized rounds and like a stability masterwork, and you're really not going to notice like a drop off. This one specifically still has that field tested perk, but we're actually to pick right the funnel web. This is like before the recluse came back. This was like iconic because one, it had frenzy. You could get like killing wind, perpetual motion. On mine that I had forever, I had a fluted roll with accurized rounds and a stability masterwork, and it just felt like so smooth. Some of them have ricochet rounds. The recluse has ricochet rounds, so I'd have to go through every 900. That was also one of the signature things about the recluse. This fluted ricochet rounds, range masterwork. This is just very stat heavy. This is probably, if I compared it to the funnel web, just a little bit higher in each category. So, it's a good submachine gun 900. These are the rolls that I would look. Hammer Forge is a little overkill. I don't think you need it. And last but not least, we've got the Meta Synergy. This is a craftable gun. I honestly just pulled the exact roll that I had out of my vault. I basically crafted it with fluted, accurized rounds, range masterwork. You see the curve. Could go stability. They're meant to be used as close range weapons. So if you're really trying to push range, once again, that's like a PvP thing that people really want to go for. But If I'm being honest, one of the guys that I play trials with, every time he's like, I got, you know, the god roll of Shiors, or like I got the god roll this, he always has the same 3 perks. He always has a ranged masterwork, fluted barrel, accurized rounds on like most of the guns he's always talking about. And I think that those rolls also feel really good in PvE. You're pretty much not going to run any of these magazine options because of backup mag, and you're not even going to really get that many rounds from adding these, right? +3, +1, like 1 extra bullet is not going to make the difference here. Yeah, you get a little stat bump, but backup mag's going to be +4. Appendage I think was only 3, and as you can already see, we're at the cap for this gun. 41 is the max, so adding that did absolutely nothing for us. And that wraps it up for submachine guns. Let's get into bows. I'm gonna have to take a sip of water before I get into this. Bows are something I'm very passionate about. Let's start with lightweights. The two differences between a lightweight and precision frame is that the lightweight is going to shoot faster, but you're going to have terrible accuracy. So we're going to go tyranny of heaven here. I've explained how stats work. Let me explain how stats work on a bow, because I feel like 90% of the people that use bows have no idea what they're talking about, or like when they're trying to be like, oh, I've got this or this. First off, reload speed. Reload speed does not increase your draw time. That's why there's a draw time masterwork. For whatever reason, I see people be like, oh, I've got a, you know, reload speed, archer's tempo, like this thing's so fast. Reload speed stat for bows is the amount of time it takes to pull an arrow out and knock it. And then after that, it's all about the charge. So it's not something I would ever build into. Let me actually, I'm going to pull up a couple bows here. Let's drop this compare. So at base, right, we're going to pull this one out. Monarch is not in here. I don't know if, you know what? We'll wait. Unless there are exotics in here. Oh, okay, there is. So let's do, I don't think there is a lightweight. Tiku's Divination. All right. This is a set roll. You can see how the accuracy is never going to be as high as something as a precision. Now, what accuracy is going to do for a lightweight is the travel time of the bow. As it gets farther, it loses its like accuracy cone, and it's, I don't want to say bullet magnetism, but arrow magnetism, right? Before they updated these changes in the same sandbox earlier this year, basically what happened was you could like snipe people with bows. Like they were basically snipers. I would use Monarch. I would sit back and the bow would just travel an insane amount of distance without losing any of its like cone accuracy. And so they end up nerfing it a little bit. I don't remember if that update actually had lightweight bows in it, but essentially it was like very oppressive. You didn't even have to be that good with a bow. The trade-off with a lightweight is that you have a faster draw time, but it'll just get shaken up. You do have higher stability. Stability actually, I'll have to get a video about this when I get like a good, I'll get a bunch of bows together and I'll try to break it down. Stability obviously has to do with flinching, but more importantly with bows, there's like a perfect draw time window. So essentially when you like knock a bow, there is a perfect window where you actually hit more damage. I tested this in PvP for a very long time with a buddy of mine, and it was so inconsistent. I couldn't figure out like if it was the amount of time it was pulled, or like pulling it, releasing it right after like full draw, or basically there's like a little window on your bow that's like glowing, and as it starts to like flash, you can actually keep that basically longer if you have a higher stability. What I was testing on it was I had a precision instrument bow with sundering, and essentially what would happen is you could one shot somebody and break their shields, which would increase your draw time, and then you would do more damage. But the difference was literally one number. So a lot of the times I would hit for like, I'm making a number up here, we'll say like 63 or 67, and it wouldn't break the shield, it would leave it at 1. And then multiple times it would just break it at 68 without precision instrument procced, right? So it was super inconclusive. I did try to do testing on it. It's super weird and finicky. I wish I could explain it better. I've looked up multiple guides and there hasn't been like a clear one. If anybody actually has any advice or like a clear stability like time of like the perfect draw time, please link that in a comment, and I would love to watch it and figure out more about it so I could explain it better in a future video. So let's get back to what I would actually put on a lightweight frame. You could build into the fact that it has a fast draw time. Now, the mistake that I feel like a lot of people do is, I feel like 99% of bows have archer's tempo, right? This is going to reduce your draw time by 25%. This doesn't increase the draw time. Like it's basically a multiplier of your existing draw time. So the difference between having like archer's tempo, a draw time masterwork, I want to say it's natural string is a 72, elastic string is an 80, sorry. So now we're down to 500. If you see that if I move this draw time, it doesn't even get any lower, and it does lower or no, I'm sorry, fusion rifles, it's not even getting any lower. And then on top of that, you put archer's tempo. If we actually go down to draw time for PvE, right, it's sitting at 455 milliseconds. Add in archer's tempo, there's that 20% increase. It's not even hitting, there's like a cap. You can't add, you know, you can't get like a 60% draw time multiplier on something that's already so low, and you're seeing this number not even change. The milliseconds of archer's tempo compared to having like elastic string, where you would rather have this bow feel better, something like polymer string, we're not sacrificing any stats, and archer's tempo is still hitting 341 milliseconds. If this thing is already just fast for you anyway and you don't notice anything, I would go with straight polymer string. Oh, I already put that there. You could also do tactile. There's really no way to like really increase accuracy on the string without sacrificing clearly your draw time and your stability, but you can make up for it with your arrowhead, which is going to be straight fletching at 10. And then honestly, like I said, this thing's already so low. Polymer, you reduce your draw time. You want to actually go for an accuracy masterwork. This is just going to help you unless you're like using it as like a hipfire weapon. Something like a bow with archer's gambit as a perk would help with like hipfire accuracy, and you mostly be hipfiring it anyway. But this is kind of the setup I have. You want to build into as much accuracy as you can, bring the draw time down a little bit, but this is still going to be way faster than a precision. The trade-off is that travel distance, that stability. All right, so now we'll do precision. My favorite precision bow right now that isn't an exotic would probably have to be pre-Aston X 4. So on this thing, because it's a 684, I did end up using polymer, but I do think that agile and tactile is going to help bump up your stats, and tactile is going to bring, I'm sorry, I have that. Agile is going to bring your handling up a little bit. Probably like third best on the list behind like tactile and polymer. Then you're going to go with straight fletchling, more accuracy. This is really just going to like long distance this thing and kind of turns it into like a better scout rifle, or even like the in-between of like a sniper and a scout rifle. Sorry. And then where we make up for draw time is just on the masterwork. I know I actually didn't go over mods for the last one, but because there's really nothing you can use, backup mag isn't even an option here. I was torn between target adjuster and counterbalance. Counterbalance would probably be the better play, because if you do like to like stay sighted in and like draw shoot, just gonna help with like recoil and keeping it on target. The other option, last thing, was compact arrow shaft. This has always felt like really good to me if you can make up for the stats on basically the perks, right? So we talked about Archer's Tempo constantly being on bows. So I would actually run an accuracy masterwork and then just run Archer's Tempo. And I mean, this is a 466 millisecond draw time compared to what we just talked about was a 341. So obviously it's one whole or 100 milliseconds, but this also hits a lot harder than a lightweight. So the trade-off is like uncomparable in my opinion. These are definitely better bows. I know people love lightweights. I'm not shitting on them. It's just that I think that these feel a lot better. I also think they look a lot cooler. That's just like a personal preference. And that does it for bows. Next on the list is actually specials and heavy weapons. So we're actually done with all of our primary weapons. So first up is going to end up being trace rifles. So let's get into trace rifles. All right, trace rifles. Let's get into it. There's only one type of trace rifle, which is adaptive. They're 1000 RPM. There is no need, in my opinion, to run enhanced battery whatsoever because the range cap is +6 and backup mag gives +7. I don't really know what other perks you're going to use here. They already have insane recoil direction. On mouse and keyboard, they're literally a laser. It's hard for me to go outside of small bore and tack battery. It's kind of the same thing I said about hand cannons, where like I always just kind of want like small bore accurized rounds on like all of my hand cannons because I just think they make them better. So I hate to kind of put this into like a set roll. I wouldn't be mad if you got polygon rifling and like a range masterwork, or even something like a particle repeater, and then you know you could go back to like small bore. I would just keep the stability as high as possible. The range to me really doesn't like matter. Like trace rifles have a really far damage fall off in my opinion, and the way you're using them, like shoot to loot is one of the biggest ways that people use trace rifles, just because of their ammo economy is so great. You don't need to like do high damage. You're basically using it to replace your primary weapon to run like double specials, because this thing has so much ammo that it's just nuts. It's like almost the equivalent of a primary weapon. It doesn't really do that much damage. You can get like good perks. This one specifically, I think I have a subsistence killing tally roll. I don't use it enough, but it does feel really good, right? That's pretty much it. Trace rifles, I don't use them a lot. The ones I do have, I have those exact rolls. Next on the list is sniper rifles. We're going to start with aggressives. These are high range, high impact. We'll go with the fan favorite, the Succession. Now, all right, this is going to get a little interesting here. This whole video has always been about preference, but when I talk about consistency, these things already like hit like a truck, and I don't feel a need to like boost their range. And even the stability, the way I use snipers is like I scope in, I take that shot, and I move on to my next target. I'm never like scoped in and I'm like shooting this guy and then like shooting this, except for like a Nezarec encounter where you break shoulders. With that being said, these are gonna get probably a little bit better because I've always run a magazine on them and like a major spec, but now that that's going away and I can just rock backup mag to get that one extra bullet. Now that we're in snipers, this is kind of what I was talking about with like your magazine cap size. It's just like it's non-existent. Like you can't you know, extended mag will get you up to 5, but are you really going to sacrifice your reload speed? I mean, yeah, you can run reconstruction here and get it back, but like, are you really going to notice this like that much? I just don't think so. Like, I would rather just have the 4 and reconstruction, and when I'm done using it, I'm putting it away and I'm back onto like my primary weapon. With aggressives, I actually preach fluted. My favorite role for this thing is reconstruction and snapshot sights, because I'm just using it to like scope in, shoot something, and move on to the next thing. You could even sacrifice, let me get this off of here. You could go stability masterwork if you want to run accurized rounds, or you could do a range masterwork and go with steady rounds if you really are having trouble like landing your shots. But the way snipers work in Destiny, even like if I take the shot and I get hit at the same time and it like yanks my reticle, I still end up getting the crit. It's just something you have to get better with. I think building into stability a lot might feel good at first for like a 72, but when you actually get better with them, I think just having accurized rounds with like a stability masterwork, fluted, all that stuff basically kind of like takes care of itself, I guess. I don't know. The snapshot sights is like you're basically aim down right away, take the shot, and move on. All right, I've spent too much time on this. You could also go handling masterwork just to really like pull it out, get into your snipe zone. This is my favorite role of this archetype. It's really good for dungeons. It's really good for like soloing things where you have to like shoot the bell, right? I'm not necessarily using it for damage. I'm using it for like mechanics and taking out like enemies that are so far away. Duality is a great example where you're killing all these ads in front of you, and then there's like one sniper all the way in the background. You're just like, please leave me alone. You just pull it out, snipe him in the head, put it away, move on to the next one. All right, next on the list is going to be adaptives. I don't really use these for PV that much. I've leveled up all of my crafted weapons to 30, so I've at least put all of these in my hands, like Locus, Locotis. I don't know, man, that's a weird name. I have a Uzume. I was trying to use it for more of like lead from gold to like proc things, but I wasn't really feeling it. I didn't mind this one. The best feeling one in my opinion is probably the Mercurial Overreach. It doesn't have really good PvE rolls on it. You could go something like Snapshot Vorpal or like Surplus Vorpal if you really wanted to, for like a PvE roll. I had this for a while. I might still have it, but I'm not really using it. If I'm being honest, the reason I like this one so much is the way it looks, and you also get to put a stock on it, which is really nice. But you're gonna see these stats are pretty balanced. These are sniper rifles. The range drop off is like non-existent unless you were trying to snipe in the spawn of a public event, or I'm sorry, a public space, and you're looking like across the map and you're, whatever reason, trying to murder ads from a mile away in a patrol. I would still probably go fluted on this. I like the way that feels. You got hammer forged. I mean, it's not the end of the world. Arrowhead break, if you really want it. If you were using this in like a DPS setting, if we end up getting, I think we are getting an adaptive next season. It's a 90 void. It's got we-won rounds, and 4 times the charm. I actually would preach arrowhead break on that weapon, because the way I'm going to be using it in my arsenal is a DPS weapon, and I just want my reticle to like stay exactly where I'm shooting, so I could just literally hold my clicker down on my mouse and just let it do the work. That's how Supremacy feels. We'll get there in a second, but it feels really good. Arrowhead break really just kind of like locks that in. The thing with this one specifically is you could get the plus 20 recoil direction, -5 handling off of the fitted stock, which takes it to 95. That's absolutely perfect. If you were lucky enough to get like a handling masterwork just to kind of like get those stats back, and then you could even run fluted ricochet rounds. I used to run appendage mag on this thing, but honestly, now that you run backup mag, it's just kind of not worth it. This is just going to give you like a little bit more stability. It's going to feel really good. This one's obviously a little bit higher stats because it's a comp weapon, but I just wanted to break down all the different possible combinations you could do to get to like a better recoil direction, and just really balance these stats out. So, all right, last sniper, rapid fire, the Supremacy. This thing has been OP this entire season. Its recoil direction is terrible, absolutely terrible. The whole reason I'm using this is for boss damage. If you had a 140 that you liked using in like regular gameplay, you don't have to go arrowhead break. I just personally think like you're going to be using this to rail out shots as fast as possible, so you want to try to get it up as much as you can. And then same thing, the range is so bad here, there's like no point to build into it, in my opinion. You're going to be shooting a boss, he's going to be shooting you back, you're going to be flinching all over the place. I would just go with the ricochet rounds, a stability masterwork. That way you can just try to keep this thing lasered on. This one has rapid hit, which is nice because you could just max your stability out. 83, never mind. You can get really high stability after a couple shots. But unfortunately for this role, we won rounds literally is just like the go-to with this one specifically. And yeah, you're throwing on a backup mag to get 7. If you really wanted to go appendage here, I don't even think you could push it to 8. Yeah, you literally can't even push an 8, so it's not even worth it. Arrowhead break, ricochet round, stability masterwork, backup mag. That is the role. Most rapid fires. I mean, Naeem's Lance is another one. I'll just cover 2 real quick. Actually, we'll do the Kilos one. I've also used this for boss damage. I actually went with Seraph rounds and also arrowhead break because this one has like a 4 times the charm focus fury roll, or you could even do a high impact reserves and then a stability masterwork. I have this crafted. This is the exact roll. Once again, I'm just trying to build that stability as much as possible. If you really wanted to, you can go steady rounds. It's a sniper, you're not really going to notice that range. And that's it for snipers. Let's get into shotguns. First frame up is going to be aggressive frames. We'll go with, we'll do Imperial Decree. Actually, I use this one more for PvP, but sudden death, this one had some interesting things. So there's a lot of things with shotguns. I have like so many choices on my notes right now. Accurized rounds is for range. All right, it's just gonna write something like this. The range is absolutely terrible. Am I using a shotgun from a million miles away? No. And this is probably the one time I'm telling you that if you're trying to use a shotgun to snipe somebody across the map, not in PvP, like a Scion that's like 40 meters away, just don't do it, man. This is literally meant to like pull these weapons out, shoot a high powerful target, either proc like 1-2 punch or have some way to do like massive damage. Something like barrel constrictor or even cascade point. If you did run cascade point, I would try to control the stability a little bit. But assault mag is probably my favorite for this. One, because you just got that stability bump, and 2, it actually increases the RPM of the weapon, which is very nice. Smoothbore is going to increase your pellet spread, but you get so much more range. And like I said, if you're using it up close, it's really hard to like not want to use this barrel specifically. Full choke just basically decreases your pellet size. This is something like if you're bad with a shotgun in PvP, you'd be using like full choke, and if you're good with a shotgun in PvP, you'd be using like smoothbore. That's my personal opinion. If I got small bore on this thing, I would not be upset. I would probably just opt in for a range masterwork on most shotguns. Like I said, unless it's like a rapid fire frame or you have like cascade point, I would probably opt in for stability. This is probably the first time I'm going to recommend freehand grip. Depending on how the shotgun like works, like how you're going to get ammo back, reconstruction, this got envious assassin, discord, that's a great perk, super underrated in my opinion. Slide shot, refilling your magazine, even just threat detector, you're just going to be loading it up anyway. You can kind of ignore backup mag, and I think that freehand grip really helps when you're just hip firing the weapon. So yeah, that pretty much covers high impacts. Let's do shot package. I think there's only, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's only Fell Winners Lie. Yeah, I really don't have anything to say about this. I just wanted to cover it because it is an archetype, but the role is already set for you. And, you know, boom, bang, there it is. All right, let's go. Pinpoint slugs. These are really good for boss damage. Well, all right, they were really good for boss damage. These, I would opt in for a little bit more range, because the way you're going to be using these, depending on the damage phase, is like you want it to hit that max range fall off, right? Something like Tanics, where you can't physically stand on top of them without getting hit by like the effect that like swirls around. Or if you're doing like Templar, right, you can't really stand right underneath of him. You'll be standing like on a plate or on like a corner of a ledge near him. So you definitely don't want to like miss out on that range drop off versus a boss like Shirochi, or I'm sorry, Kali, right? If you're gonna like farm Kali over again, I was just running like double slugs for fun. I didn't really need to build into like an insane amount of range because I was just standing on top of her. Hammerforged rifling, probably my first pick, small bore being second. Arrowhead break is not a bad option here either, for the same exact reason I just said. You're using it for boss damage, and you're just gonna like lay on the trigger. You just want to make sure you can like get back to your center zone of your reticle faster, rather than like having to pace your shots because you're just like kicking super far off to the left. Assault mag would be my first choice. DPS, you get literally 5+ rounds per minute. These things are mostly boss DPS weapons in my opinion, not to say that you can't use them outside of that. This thing for instance has like reconstruction, frenzy, you're getting a damage boost, paracausal affinity. I don't even think this would help you. Yeah, I mean you could get a damage bonus off it, but if you're not liking that roll, you can go Hammerforge, Accurize, and then range masterwork, and you'll just be sniping essentially bosses if you wanted to build in this whole play. And then backup mag, same thing. If you really wanted to pull the recoil direction a little bit, you're almost at 75 here with counterbalance. If you're running reconstruction, etc., etc. All right, that's done with pinpoints. Let's go into precision. I'm actually going to pick a PvP one for this. This is actually, the Matador is like one of my favorite shotguns just because of how great it feels. It feels like 90% of the time I'm shooting it, I shouldn't be killing the person I'm shooting it with, and they somehow die anyway. The one I have for PvP, I know I said I wouldn't be covering PvP guns, but just in terms of like how good it feels, I did end up going smoothbore with Accurize rounds. I don't really use these a lot in PvE. Retold Tail has 1-2 punch on it. Hopefully Prophet of Doom gets a rework in Final Shape. We haven't heard anything about like Garden of Salvation getting an update. I thought it was supposed to happen this season. Seems like it's going to happen in Echoes, since it actually like ties into the theme. Maybe even Vault of Glass for all we know in terms of red borders. But yeah, I mean, like I said, full choke is going to lower your pellet spread if you want to use it for PvE, Accurize rounds, throw on that backup mag, range masterwork. I mean, this is 100 range. You're just sniping things. If you're finding yourself missing most of your shots, probably just go some stability here. Could go small bore, put on that freehand grip, run around, shotgun things with a precision frame. Next up is lightweights. Now, all right, sword breaker. This is probably one of my most used shotguns, but if I'm being honest, it's mostly as a utility. We talked about letting weapons fill your arsenal up. These things aren't going to do like a crazy amount of damage. Like there might be one with cascade point, but like most of the content I play, I'm never like trying to proc cascade point and then running up to a champion and nightfall and just being like dumping my entire mag into it. Usually I just shoot it once, follow up with a strand melee on 1-2 punch, and it usually deletes the champion anyway. With that being said, assault mag here, you actually get more rounds per minute, and this just kind of like helps where if you're like shoot punch shoot punch shoot punch, in my opinion, hunters can make good use of this, titans can make good use of this, warlocks not so much. There's not like super crazy melee builds for warlocks. I know they exist, but I don't think they're as popular. And this is probably where I would take full choke, and that is basically to guarantee that you're going to proc 1-2 punch or any sort of perk that requires you to hit every single pellet. Small bore would not be the worst thing here. I'm still going range masterwork, although I would also argue full choke with a handling masterwork just to get it to like pull out faster. Nice. Just to get it to like pull out faster, to proc that 1-2 punch. They're really light shotguns. They feel really good in my opinion. This one strand, I'm absolutely in love with it. You can run freehand grip if you really want to just like keep the 1-2 punch activated, because I'm never really like focused on backup mag. I'm just using it as a utility weapon. 6 feels like enough. You know, you don't even have 6 melees. You're not going to be using it that much. And yeah, so that covers lightweights. Let's do rapid fires. Probably by this point in the video, I would assume you know exactly where I'm going with this. We'll do until its return. This was the new one. I actually opted for corkscrew because the stats were just so balanced that it felt weird trying to like boost one thing over the other. Full choke, if you are using some sort of damage combination that requires you to like not spread your bullets all over the place, ergo like overflow and cascade point. I actually opted in for appendage mag on this because you could run freehand grip. I don't really see a need to boost the range because you're going to be using this thing super close anyway. But if you really don't want to use freehand grip and you want backup mag, I would just play into accurized rounds or even steady rounds, just so you're keeping your shotgun locked in while you're shooting it. You could go stability masterwork here to really keep it that way. I really just don't think you need range on a rapid fire. It's too low. Boosting it's not going to make it feel like night and day in my opinion. But each his own. Just play around with it, see what's up. And that's it for shotguns. So let's get on to fusion rifles. Rapid fires are actually going to be our first on the list. And scatter signal. This thing is an absolute monster this season. I made a comment, I think earlier in the video, about someone in a raid was like trying to tell me either about a linear fusion rifle or like my fusion rifle. They're like, you have the wrong stuff on. And I was just like, you're right, man. I've never played this game a day in my life. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Thanks, Blueberry. You know, thanks, level 5 Guardian. You know, your advice means the world to me. No, I mean, I don't mean to hate, but like, I think you should ask somebody why they're running what they're running. It's okay to like check people's loadouts, to be like, hey, you know, why are you running that? It's like, oh, I just kind of put that on. It's like, oh, well, if you actually ran this, it would help with a bigger magazine size or like faster charge time. And they're like, oh, okay, that's useful. When you just like look at someone's gun, you're like, you're an idiot, you shouldn't be running that. It's like, okay, cool, whatever. I like arrowhead break on this thing. Same thing I just talked about with the rapid fire shotguns, right? Just kind of keep it like from bouncing as much. The thing with fusion rifles is like they are pretty easy to control. And if you have perks, something like controlled burst, where you just start like picking up charge time, you kind of get into like a rhythm. So I totally get it if you don't want to run arrowhead break. I don't think it's like a must have. You could go hammer forged. This is mostly for like if you're trying to use a faster charge time on a faraway boss, something like planets and Nezarec, and you don't like pop the well right on top of them, just so you're not losing good damage. I don't think you can get a +2 mag size with it. Yeah, you can't. So backup mag still going to be the play here. Charge time masterwork. This does bring your impact down. So if you're really considering going for like a good boss damage phase, you could counter it with liquid coils, which is a 2% increase in damage. Excuse me. I don't think trading projection fuse for like a barrel is worth it, because there's so many good things in this column. You have accelerated coils, you have enhanced battery, and you have liquid coils. These are either going to boost your charge time, they're going to boost your magazine size, or it's going to boost your damage. And these are like the 3 most important things that you can play around with on basically every single fusion rifle, unless you're just trying to use one as like a sniper. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but this projection fuse for me is more of a PvP perk than it is like a PvE perk. Yeah, range wouldn't be the worst thing here, but then I would probably go with accelerated coils if you end up getting like not a charge time masterwork. This is obviously a crafted weapon, but if you're going for like a random roll, it would really suck in my opinion if you didn't get the charge time masterwork. And yeah, that basically sums it up. We'll do adaptive frames. We'll go with Teshwan Shosh. So real quick, how do you use a fusion rifle in PvE? You are either someone who loves to use them for like ad clear or like taking out majors. Once again, there's nothing wrong with that. And then there is boss damage. Unfortunately, Destiny created this awesome little perk called Controlled Burst, and it seems to be on like most fusion rifles nowadays, if not all of the new ones. And not only is it great for boss damage, but it's also really good for ad clear. So it's really hard to like pick a different perk. This is going to increase your charge time and your damage. So whether you want to build into an ad clearing fusion rifle or a boss killing fusion rifle, it feels like you're just building into the same exact build. Like you're not going to differ. Reconstruction and control burst here, like, you know what I'm saying? Like it just, they made all of these perks, and it feels like 90% of them are like useless because I'm just not going to use them. Like some of these are mostly like PvP, backup mag, range finder, kickstart, kill clip. Threat detector wouldn't be like the worst thing in the world, but with reconstruction, like I'm not really worried about reloading or really getting like the shot off. You basically use these point blank too, like a shotgun. With adaptives, I actually did opt in for Hammer Forge just because it does help like the spread a very little bit, like the corners of it kind of curve a little bit. I did testing on this against a wall for a while, and the more range I pumped into it, the more it felt like my spread was not like spreading out the further I went, until the point where you just saw it like splatter all over the wall. But once again, this depends how you're using it. If you're using it up in someone's face, you don't need to push for range. You could go with something like small bore just to keep like a good balance. You could also go arrowhead break if you're just going to look to like use it. You could hip fire it at something for all I care. I did go with liquid coils here just for the damage boost. Now that we're basically rocking backup mag for most of these all the time, this one's actually a +2, which is even better. Charge time's coming down. Now we're looking at a 620 plus the 10% decreased charge time boost. That's going to be nice. That brings it down to 67 milliseconds off from its original. And yeah, backup mag or freehand grip, depends on how you want to use it, man. Let's move into aggressive frames. Oh, right. So this is funny to me. So there's one aggressive frame fusion rifle in the game. It's from Europa. I've never used this thing, so I was having a really hard time talking about it. And then when I looked at the perk pool, I was like, I don't even think I would ever chase anything like this for PvE. But I did make one build just in case you really wanted to use it, and I don't know why. I just kind of went with like Hammer Forge, Projection Fuse, and a ranged Masterwork. Mostly because this thing only really has PvP perks. Killing Winds, Rangefinder. This thing would probably snipe somebody if you ever got one and if you ever used it, but to be honest, you know, hey, if there's a guy out there that has like 40,000 kills with this thing, I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean to destroy your favorite weapon, dude. All right, next is Precision Frame. Deliverance. This was my favorite fusion rifle when I first started crafting guns in Witch Queen. Right, I hunted this gun down and I basically mained it for like the next 2 seasons. Until like more crafted guns came out that I wanted to play with. But this thing is a beast. It looks good, it feels good. I like 780s. 960s are just really slow for PvE. I don't think I've ever used one for PvE. They all feel like they're completely crafted towards PvP. It's the same thing with like the whole 120 thing. Like a lot of the slower firing weapons hit harder, so they feel better in PvP because it's easier to like secure kills. But when you're trying to use like a 960 in a raid for DPS, like damage per second, and you're shooting what 190 charge times slower than the like next model, and that's not even talking about a 500, which is 460 charge time faster. Like you're hitting 2 shots before this thing hits 1 potentially, right? With that being said, what I like to run on this thing, it already has really good stats and it even has really good recoil direction. So with that being said, I did just pump in a Hammer Forge or small bore with liquid coils for more damage. But my second best option, if actually maybe not even my first, would probably be accelerated with that charge time masterwork backup mag. Because these kind of already hit like a truck, because they already hit like a truck, I don't feel like the loss of impact is gonna take away. Like the primary usage of some of these are gonna be right specifically Deliverance. We're looking at Chill Clip here. Next season we're gonna be able to activate we're gonna be able to freeze targets in 2 shots, whereas before it took like 3 and it took way too long, so everyone was using Riptide. But now you're gonna get it in 2, which is going to be nice because you're going to apply basically enough slow off the rip to stun and overload, and then the second one is going to do an unstop. So you have one gun that does both unstop and overload champions. You go enhanced battery here? Yeah. Am I ever shooting 8 shots? No. Right, I just settle for the backup mag +2. It's already giving you like a better beneficial bonus than the +1. It's just not even really worth it in my opinion. And if you were to take off accelerated coils, just for a reference, if anybody's just listening, it's a 40 millisecond difference. If that doesn't mean anything to you, then pretty much just run liquid coils, get your damage back up. You're still rocking a 783 charge time. Sorry. And last but not least, kind of already talked about it, kind of already gave it away. Right, we have high impact frames. The only one I've ever used for PvE is probably the Eremite, but we'll do the loaded question. When this thing came out into GMs, all my friends instantly were like, oh, it gets reservoir burst, you know, and overflow. If that's how you like to use this weapon, be my guest. I'm not telling you not to, but the only role I ever hunted that I never even used was like an overflow control burst, and this wasn't even enough to really make it feel better than a rapid fire frame. You get so much super energy back off of a rapid fire frame because you're just doing so much damage so much faster that you know, there's potential that you can get a super back in a damage phase by using the scatter signal. You could literally like Blade Barrage, Dragon's Breath, scatter signal, and get a second Blade Barrage before you hit the 4th plate in Warlord's Ruin second boss. you would not be able to do that with this. Like, it's not going to pump out enough damage. If somebody wants to argue with me, I will find one of these, I'll put it on, and I will go try to do the same thing in Warlord's Ruin, and I'll just show you it does not work. With that being said, these things have such bad stability and handling that you're pretty much just building in the range. You're just going hammer forged. Small bore is your second best option. If you wanted to abandon range altogether, you're going polygon. These 3 bottom barrels are probably your top 3 here. And then projection fuse with that hammer forged. Accelerated coils. If you absolutely hate this thing's charge time, the lowest I think we could even get this down to is 798 from 870. It's milliseconds, sorry, not charge time. I don't think it's really noticeable. And then backup mag, this would just help with something like overflow and reservoir burst if that was the setup you were going for. Oh, you know what, I completely forgot to mention, freehand grip is another good option for these. If you're going to be hip firing it, I personally sight down. I just enjoy sighting down on fusion rifles. I think a lot of them look good, their scopes, personally. So yeah, so that covers fusion rifles. We're almost done. Grenade launchers, glaives, linears, rockets. We got 4 left. I'm actually just going to try to push through this, not speed it up, just kind of like wrap this all up in one continuous loop. So let's go with grenade launchers. This is basically going to cover heavies and specials. So there's 2 on here that are very unique. Most people might not even know they're in the game. We're going to do wave frames first, as they're the lowest firing one at 72. This is the heavy, I'm pretty sure. No, that's a 120. All right. We'll go with Tusk of the Boar. A lot of these only have high velocity rounds or implosion rounds. In my opinion, you're going for high velocity. You don't want to nuke your blast radius. Next season, the changes to grenade launchers are basically that the blast radius will actually matter in the width of the wave. So you want to stay at 100 blast radius. I don't know if that means they're going to actually like reduce the natural intrinsic 100 blast radius that basically all of these wave frames get down to like 80, and then you have to build into it. I'm hoping that's not the case. We'll have to see. I don't know if they actually mentioned that like in the patch. You know what? Let's just look it up. We have plenty of time. Oh yeah. Okay. So the default display stat for blast radius has been changed from 100 to 50, where 50 represents the previous baseline. Any stat over 50 will result in a larger wave than was possible before. Oh, so that's actually okay. That actually changes things. So we're going to do this on the fly here. So if this was at 50, which would be the equivalent of 100, ways that we could improve our blast radius. Oh, I can't actually see it because it's at 100. Let's do implosion rounds on. So this appears volatile is going to give you 10. Confined launch would give you 10. That brings you back down to 10 or 90, sorry. Linear only takes you up 5. And yeah, so between volatile, you could push an extra 10, but you're going to take your velocity to handling down. Confined launch is going to bring your stability up, which doesn't matter. It's a wave frame. You're literally shooting out of your feet anyway. So I'd probably take... Probably the new setup would be volatile with high velocity rounds and make the argument for basically a blast radius masterwork now. That would push you to about 70. I don't even know if you could actually get higher than that without adding perks or anything like that. So yeah, initially what I had, if you don't really care about increasing your blast radius and you want the way of the gun to feel good, I just go quick launch. It really balances the stat out between handling and velocity. Obviously, I just said you're shooting it at your feet, but stat-wise, you're going to get this basically as close to 100 as possible. You're going to have good handling, and you'll also have good reload speed. Something where you're using like a kill-activated perk. You know, these are breech-loaded, so there's only one shot. So if you were trying to load, like, we'll say Envious Assassin and Chain Reaction, and you like constantly have to reload it, you could opt in for the reload masterwork. That way it just feels better. I don't think there is any single, yeah, there's not. Mods, freehand grip. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any other mod in this perk pool that is going to be worth putting on. Counterbalance is, if you're shooting a waveframe grenade launcher sighted in at somebody who's a miles away, I'm just kind of questioning what you think you're doing with that thing. Yeah, so that's it for waveframes. Let's get into lightweights. We're gonna do, we'll go with Lingering Dread here. Actually, let's go back. I do know that we're getting, I don't want to say it because I am posting this video tomorrow, but I might have just given it away. Ignition code, I'm gonna do the ignition code for no apparent reason whatsoever. Definitely not a spoiler. Now, these have a lot more barrels to choose from. I'm sorry, grenade types. Disorienting grenades is something you're gonna use if you're gonna blind stuff. Just be noted, you're gonna nerf your blast radius. It's literally just designed to stun things. And before it was actually like too big, you were basically blinding way too many enemies. So in an update earlier this year, they like reduced the size of it. And I think even the effect of it, just because it was like very oppressive to keep things blinded for a very, very long time. Now, you're not using it with disorienting grenades. Even if you were, I like hard launch on basically most of these because it just increases the velocity. It's just getting it from my gun to the target faster. Considering you can actually see grenade launcher shots, like visibly the time traveled, right? Versus like a bullet. I like to get it out faster and I like to build into a lot of velocity. Quick launch is another great option here because you're still doing, I'm sorry, you're still getting velocity, but if you ran something like spike grenades with hard launch, you are going to nerf your blast radius. But we did talk about having like higher velocity means more damage. I do not think that that is specific to every single grenade launcher, so please don't like try to build every grenade launcher like the mountaintop combo of implosion rounds and hard launch with a velocity masterwork, where you're like nuking your blast radius on purpose so that it does more damage on the impact. And that's because the blast radius on that thing, like you're not using it to clear like 15 adds in a wide circle. Spike grenades is going to give you that, I think it ends up coming out to a 3% damage buff total. They basically raised every other type of grenade, so that way spike grenades, like you didn't get a grenade launcher like this doesn't have spike grenades and you just chucked it out of the air. You could really go handling here or velocity. Definitely do not go blast radius unless they make some other crazy change where they nerf the blast radius of all grenade launchers to 50 for whatever reason. Slap on freehand grip. I like to hip fire these things. I feel like that's basically how they're meant to be used. And yeah, so that covers lightweights. Let's get into, there's only one micro missile, so let's knock that out of the park now. If you don't know, I don't want to get into the crazy specifics about this, but for the mountaintop, implosion rounds, hard launch, that is it. That, like, I'm done. Velocity masterwork, if you get a blast radius masterwork, please pray to God it's at level 1 and don't ever masterwork that thing. And if you're someone who loves having the gold border around your guns, then you're gonna have to hunt down another one, because you are not going to be able to upgrade this thing. You're going to nerf your damage. The argument can be made that it is so insignificant that you would never even notice it. Something between like 90 blast radius versus 85. However, I would say that it is a significant bump in damage if you're at 100 instead of 85. That's just my opinion. Like, if you still got spike grenades, so you're 95, 100, I still think this is like a solid roll. Like, I would keep this. If I said don't keep any other roll, I'm sorry. I would keep a spike grenade hard launch one, especially if you got the 2 perks on it that you were like really hunting for, because I think it took me like 45 billion attempts to get an impulse like frenzy one, because I just wanted to be able to shoot it as fast as I can. Just for reference too, we talked about reload speed. Impulse amplifier gives you a bonus reload speed and a lesser reload animation. It feels great. Just a personal opinion. Figured I'd throw that in. Let's get into double fires. I have actually fallen in love with these double fires. I didn't like the void one because I wasn't using it the right way. Now I've been hunting for, I don't even know if Dim's actually still up. I've been hunting for a, what is it, Wilder Flight? Let's see if I actually did get it. Feeding Frenzy. Yeah, so I was basically looking for a Repulsor Frenzy, and I was just going to only use it in like void builds. The velocity of these things is nuts, and the blast radius is nuts. I mained one of these for a while, the wild style. I got the adept one with Keep Away and Incandescent. Enlighten Action would have been a great one too, but this thing just like it's so fun to use. I don't know why I was sleeping on the first one, probably because I just didn't use it enough, but this thing is really fun. If you haven't like played around with one of these, I would recommend like hunting one down. They're way more fun than I thought they were going to be. I have on mine a quick launch to hit that 100, but you could easily go hard launch and then spike grenades. Once again, I just like the impact. Quick launch is still going to get you basically the same thing. I have quick launch first, but I wouldn't be upset if I got hard launch. And you could even make an argument for a volatile launch if you like to use it for like ad clear, and then even tack on like a blast radius masterwork. Like, I mean, this is starting to look like a high impact scout rifle stat line, which is kind of nuts. I don't know why I put backup mag on here. Yeah, free hand grip all day for basically every single grenade launcher, now that we're not going to have any sort of damage mods. Disorienting grenades, once again, this is an option if that's how you choose to use it, but Harden or Dust is craftable, and if you want a disorienting grenade launcher, I would just probably use that one, or like an ignition code with slide shot, if you end up really wanting to hunt down a crazy roll like that. But this thing is really meant to be used for damage, in my opinion. I would not use this to blind enemies. I would strictly use this to mess stuff up, if you know what I'm talking about. The other note here is I think they're actually both, yeah, so I'll cover this because they're both text balance stocks. You end up getting a, let's put all these stats back on. You end up getting a additional range, handling, and reload speed after hitting 4 hipfire shots. And what's great about this is, for me at least, it was proccing in 2 because both explosions were counting as 1 separately off the double fire. And it just takes this thing's stats to like a whole nother level. Take Keep Away on this thing. You're literally sitting at 92 reload speed, 100 velocity, blast radius. Like, this thing is just a monster. Put on volatile if you really want to. It feels good. All right, that's enough about that. Let's do adaptive frames. I think this is the super weird one I was talking about. I didn't even know this existed. No, I'm sorry. That's precision frames. We'll get to that in a second. Edge Transit. This one just came out. This one's like a stat monster. It's actually kind of hard. We're gonna go Cataphract here. It's easy to build the Edge Transit. I like hard launch for these with spike grenades. I mostly use this in a boss damage phase, and so I want more velocity because I want more impact damage, and on top of that, like, I don't want to miss, right? Like, I want my shot to get to its target as fast as possible. Backup mag is the play here. I'm not going to get into perks. I could do that all day, but if you get quick launch, I wouldn't be upset. If you want to use these things for ad clear, probably volatile launch is the way to go. And you could do proximity grenades, even though it nerfs your blast radius. Or I would just probably opt in to not go with a velocity masterwork and a blast radius. It's a very comfortable 75. I don't think you're going to notice a difference here. Let's go with adaptives are done. Let's do wave frames. So this is interesting because these are going to get a buff this season in terms of damage. I think the blast wave radius already got increased. It was like 30 or 40%. Sorry for not having the exact number, but the damage is supposed to go up like 30-40%. I actually can pull that up. Um, These are special. All right, let's just do waveframe heavy. I apologize. You're just gonna have to listen to some music right now. Maybe it's not in here. That's probably, maybe that was in an earlier one, but there is a damage bonus coming. High velocity rounds, let it hit the ground faster, and quick launch. These things are just meant to like spray and pray. Put it at your feet, shoot the trigger as long as you can. Try to find a good perk that can overflow damage into it, so you can just dump. I would say that when I get my hands on some testing next season, I'll test if the blast radius actually increases the waveframe, because if they're saying it's going to work with breach loaded, I would assume it's going to work with heavy, but I'll have to test it. So until then, I would just go velocity. If you get blast radius, don't be upset. Rapid fires. Firaxis' Distress. This is probably my most used rapid fire. I just was running a lot of Strand this season because of multiple different reasons, but this thing is actually kind of nuts. I have a crafted roll with hard launch, high velocity rounds, and a velocity masterwork with impulse amplifier, and it was pretty crazy. Like, someone was shooting like an edge transit with decent velocity, and I was shooting this thing, and it literally like hit a building almost, it felt like 1.5 to 2 seconds faster than what he was using. It just like, it launches. This thing is really fun for ad clear. Like, I feel like I'm guaranteed to hit the target that I'm shooting it at, because he doesn't even have a millisecond to react. I would probably say this is more of a ad clearing grenade launcher, but the problem is if you are going to use it as an ad clear grenade launcher, I would probably boost the blast radius, unless you're like someone who's just really good at shooting these things, like hip firing it. We're putting on freehand grip if that's how you're going to use it, or backup mag. But if I were going to use this in like boss damage, if one of these end up coming out with a full court, well, that's you know what, that would actually hurt you. Surrounded, if for whatever reason, you know, Nezarec, you like hung out in the middle and left some ads up and you wanted to try to proc surrounded, be my guess. And then this would basically guarantee you to miss, and if you did miss, you would miss really fast and it would just shoot like halfway across the map. But I enjoy this roll a lot. You could pull down on velocity rounds here and put on spike grenades for the damage bonus. You do not need to hit like 100. That would just be absolutely crazy. All right, precision frames. This is the super weird one I was talking about. Didn't even know they existed. You can actually use these next season. However, I don't think any of them are going to be great. There's one green one that isn't sunset apparently, and there's 4 that are sunset. The only one I thought looked good was the bushwhacker. And that's because the stats were like super crazy on this thing. It only has firmly planted. The Days Fury did have spike grenades, but it has snapshot sights and it doesn't have quick launch or hard launch. I guess you could really just bump the blast radius up. Maybe this would be like a really cool ad clear weapon. They each kind of have like they only have 3 different barrels and then like 2 different grenades and then 1 perk, but none of them have anything that like makes me think they're gonna be like, oh, I unsunset this arthritis grenade launcher and it ended up being the best thing in the game. But now that they're coming back, maybe we'll see one. We'll see what's up. All right, Glaives. Let's get into Glaives. I am going to hit you with this same thing that I have for just a couple other guns, and that is, we want an adaptive first. So these are in my opinion the worst archetype of glaive. Please don't shoot me if you main a glaive. I did like this thing right here, distaff. I'm not even gonna try to say that word right now. I'm gonna butcher it. This one had a super cool roll with replenishing Aegis and destabilizing rounds, and if you ran it on Hunter with like the glaive arms, is really fun. But you didn't really get to pick. Like, ballistic tuning is, in my opinion, the best thing for a glaive, because the range, like, it just feels better. Like, I don't care about shield duration. If you're trying to be a tank, then by all means make that shield duration build, but I'm not that guy. So I basically go ballistic tuning and accurized rounds or appended mag for all of these. There's only one, which is a rapid fire glaive. Let's get back to the real thing. So this is a roll you could actually craft. I'm going ballistic tuning, I'm going accurized rounds, or appendage mag to get one more. I don't even think you can get it to 6. All right, cool. And then a range masterwork. These just feel good, but at the same time, I don't really shoot glaives enough. I only shoot glaives to proc a perk, which is close to melee. Close to melee, you have to kill something with a glaive in order to get a damage bonus with the actual like melee. So I do apologize for not like going into these like more. Like, if I jump into aggressives, these are actually my favorite. I have a Judgment of Kalgaroth with like over 10,000 kills in Gambit. Please don't make fun of me. It is what it is, man. I like Strand Titan. Ballistic tuning on this thing, accurized rounds or appendage mag. I'm not really reloading it. I'm comfortable with 4. I'm very comfortable with 4 in the mag. I kind of know like my sweet spot with it. And then range masterwork or handling, because the handling was like so bad on this thing. Yeah, range, I did handling because you're gonna overcap range. It's not gonna matter anyway. And freehand grip is also another good option, but that's only if you're gonna go appendage mag. So accurized rounds, backup mag, or appendage mags, range masterwork, in my opinion. Let's do rapid fires. The greasy luck. I never really used this thing. I didn't like any of the perks on it other than like close to melee and like impulse amplifier or lead from gold. It's super cool. It looks like a harpoon, but it was hard for me to put down an aggressive. I just feel like they hit harder. They probably don't, but in my mind, I'm swinging literally like a giant battering ram, and that's the fantasy that I like to live. That's why we're here, and that's why I'm talking about it. How to play your favorite weapon. Same thing though, unfortunately. I would actually go for ballistic tuning and light mag here, just to get even more range. It's not entirely necessary, but I like having the reload speed because it already has a high reload speed, so it's nice to kind of like build into it if you want to be like shooting and reloading, right? If you did go for like an impulse incandescent roll, this actually sounds fun the more I'm talking about it. I wish I had hunted one of these. This looks like a good time, especially on a hunter, right? With the arms, you're getting incandescent and an explosion on top of that. Put on backup mag, put it to 6. The cool thing about the hunter arms for glaives, real quick, if you've never used them, you've no idea what I'm talking about, why you keep talking about these things. I think I want to say they're getting a buff. No, what it is there's an exotic update, and they're no longer going to require you to like match the subclass. And that's because of prismatic, right? Like, we don't have a strand glaive. Please, I hope we get a strand glaive. I would love that. We don't have a strand glaive, so if you're running a strand super, those arms are completely useless. So they're basically like decoupling it from needing to like match the subclass. But what they do is every time you stab something, you refill the magazine, not like fully, you like add a shot, and you can also overfill the magazine, and then every time you shoot it, it can make things explode. The replenishing Aegis perk, which is actually on this one too, when you block, if somebody hits you, you get refunded. So you basically get into this like crazy glaive gameplay loop. If you're that person and you've actually made it this far in the video, like, this actually is like a very fun thing to play around with. So if you didn't know, now you know. Not gonna say the last word of that. Freehand grip, range, or handling masterwork, doesn't really matter. Once again, if you want to block with these things, shield duration. If you want to go for that crazy reload speed, so you're just using this thing like a menace, go for it, man. I don't have any like perfect preference for these things. All right, we got 2 weapons left, thank God, because this has been a really long video, and if you can't tell, it actually took 2 days, and I'm almost out of breath. And I gotta go to the bathroom now. All right, linear fusion rifles. This is actually gonna, this might take a second. Linear, we're gonna go with aggressives first. They're both 533s. Okay, only difference here between precision and aggressive is aggressives are 3 bursts. I think they're actually changing the names of all these so they'll be easier to understand. I read that twid, I completely forget about it. Let's do Briar's Contempt. Now, up until this point, I had preached Arrowhead Break because this is essentially a linear pulse rifle. Now, there's an update coming in the final shape where it's not going to bounce as hard. They talked about it. They said that like it was just kind of like really hard. I don't even think it was hard to control in my opinion, but the real problem is that it bounced so much that even if like you were like super glued on your target, one of those shots was probably not hitting like a precision hit. So if you had to hit like a super small target, Callie's head, right? Like you might hit the first 2, but then you end up missing the 3 because it's just so much like bouncing going on and you're trying to like pull back from it. So if that update ends up making these things like absolute lasers, right? For instance, this one gets keep away, which helps with that like cone size. We might be able to abandon Arrowhead Break. Maybe I'll cover it. I'll like recap a couple things in barrels and mags in a perk video in the future once I get to like play around and I get a bunch of video testing for you guys. I appreciate the podcast style thing. This is kind of how I think better. If I had to like shoot guns and talk about them, I would just be stuttering more than I already am. So Arrowhead Break, small bore's not a bad option, and hammer forge. The reason for hammer forge is just because we talked about bullet magnetism. Are you going to notice a difference between 7 and 10? No, you're not. You could make an argument for accelerated coils here to reduce the charge time. The problem with it is it's only 33 milliseconds, and I'd rather make up for it in the masterwork. And then I would run liquid coils to get back to like my damage percentage. I have a super weird feeling these are actually going to be good in the final shape, because they're saying they're trying to like break away from the normal damage, and the fact that they're doing like a reduced recoil bounce to it tells me that like I'm gonna need to use this thing, and I'm gonna be getting shot in the face pretty hard because I'm assuming they were play testing it and people were like, I can't control this thing whatsoever. And they're like, all right, these are basically unusable in like a damage phase for like certain bosses that they're potentially adding, and decided to make that change. So I wouldn't sleep on these. Reconstruction, I think they both get, this one and the other one, they both get reconstruction. And this one's got, what did I use? Focus Fury, and the other one's got Precision Instrument, which is going to be crazy because you're going to proc it in 2 shots. And then Fire and Forget's okay. Storm Chaser, I like Rapid Hit Vorpal. I'm getting into perks, I'm sorry. But Arrowhead Break, if that update doesn't feel as good as I thought it was, if not, I would just go small bore here. Charge Sign Masterwork, Liquid Coils, Accelerated Coils. I have Ionized Battery on here. I did put this on here for magazine size because you can get to 7. And if you do have one with reconstruction, you're just going to get more like shots off. But that really depends on the damage window. If you're shooting like 14 linear fusion rifle shots as a 3 burst and you still have ammo left over, please take the time to run back, go craft like a different one. We'll go back to this one and just put liquid coils on it, because if you can't even get all of your ammo off in one damage phase, I would argue why not be doing more damage, right? Like if you only get 10 out of 14 shots, then just go for liquid coils and get 10 shots. You could even argue to put on the counterbalance, give something like we'll go hammer forged here or small bore, and then that way you're getting all the benefits. You have your recoil direction above 85, you're getting more damage, and you get a little bit of stat bump in there. All right, that was way longer than I want to talk about them, but let's do precisions real quick. Basically the same. Honestly, it's everything that I kind of just said. We'll do cataclysmic. This is a really good one. I know I'm picking a lot of raid weapons here, but they're really good. I end up basically going with hammer forge for this, or small bore. Accelerated coils. No, I'm sorry. Ionized battery. This one is very specific. So ionized battery, charge time masterwork, and I used to run backup mag to get to 6. 6 is your sweet number right here. But now that we can run backup mag instead of boss spec, you could run accelerated coils or liquid coils, preferably probably liquid. The whole point of hitting 6 is to proc 4 times a charm in like a very perfect shot fashion. And Taipan, however you want to say it, the more magazine size you have, the more chance you have of proccing 7 and Vice Stinger. So the reason I'm bringing this up specifically is we're about to get a Strand 3 burst Vice Stinger. Auto-loading holster bait and switch was basically the role I was looking at. It's going to be nuts because if Vice Stinger procs every time you get a hit, you're essentially hitting for, I wish it was in the API, 7 times 3, 21. You have 21 shots to proc Vice Stinger, which reloads ammo. For linears, it's 10%. So that ends up being 0.7. Not sure how that's going to work. I would assume it would round up, so you're at least going to get 1 shot back, which is technically 3. We'll see how it plays out. Accelerated coils, ionized battery, and liquid coils. These are the 3 main fusion rifle batteries, in my opinion. Enhanced battery. I'm sorry, enhanced battery, ionized. I don't like the -20 reload. I don't even think you can. It's still giving you +1, or this is giving you +0. At least it says it is. Nah, it gives you +1. All right, sorry. Talking to myself. All right, last one. Last weapon. Rocket launchers. So let's start with high impacts. These are not the best archetype. I'm just gonna say that right now. They're okay. A rocket launcher is a rocket launcher. I have impact casing on basically every rocket launcher except for Hake precisions and precisions. This is just a flat 2.2 damage bonus. No other reason to run anything else except for when I get to the other 2. I like hard launch. For high impacts, I actually prefer a quick launch. Don't really want to take down the blast radius and the velocity. You just kind of want a straight velocity bump and keep the blast radius where it's at. And then you could probably go for a blast radius masterwork to get to 100. Ad clear. I think this is for ad clear. I don't think it's really that good for DPS. It's just kind of the way that the frame works out. There's so many other better frames. You're running either freehand grip or Icarus grip, and that's because you're either jumping up in the air to shoot a rocket down at something, or you're pulling a rocket out and just hip firing it at a boss that's big enough where if you miss it, you probably should just wipe and start over. All right, Hake precision. So I think Palmyra is the only one that isn't blue. Yeah, I actually like this thing a lot, only because for certain bosses where they're like moving around, goes to the deep boss, we actually just kind of ran it one day and did a div, and we were like, oh, my buddy's like, oh, I'm gonna use Apex, and I'm like, I'm gonna use this tracking rocket because why not, right? Loaded up 3 stasis surges, explosive light, and I think impulse amplifier, and this thing cooked. I think I had the most DPS, obviously just between the 2 of us, but this thing cooked, and it was just, it always locked on. You know, if she moved, I didn't miss a shot. That's probably why I cooked. Hard launch. push that velocity. You just want that rocket to like hit that target faster. An argument could be made that if you're trying to shoot something that's moving so fast all the time, that going slower would be better, because then it would like not whip right past it at the last second, and it would just take so slow, like almost nerf your velocity and increase your blast radius. But that's so situational. Like, please don't do that. But if you really want to play around with it and see, be my guest. All right, precision frame. We should be getting the pyroclastic flow back, which is nice. Season of the Dawn. That's kind of already been announced. That was not a spoiler. We'll go Royal Entry here. This thing actually used to be goated for Riven, or one of my friends said it was goated for Riven. Now I'm saying it out loud, it sounds kind of dumb. This was just a really reliable, you could get like impulse, auto loading, and something else that he was raving about. I apologize so much for what I'm saying right now. Impact casing, high velocity rounds, same thing. This is a tracking rocket, hard launch, velocity masterwork. That's the setup. And adaptive frames, this is getting into like some more serious boss damage stuff. Apex Predator, this thing, ever since it's come out, it's goated. It's absolutely goated. I think there's only one other rocket launcher I'm gonna say is super goated, in my opinion. Impact casing here, I run hard launch. I want to hit my target faster. Not gonna get into the roll. I ran a velocity masterwork. I want my impact damage to be the most damage, right? I don't care about blast radius. Blast radius to me is for ad clear. There is like a damage split, I know, with like grenade launchers, where like, this was an old video, so I do apologize, but if it stayed anywhere consistent, right, the blast radius stat would do like 30,000 and the velocity would do 20, and then let's say you like flip the stats, the impact would do like 30 and the blast radius would do like 20. So it was like always doing the same amount of damage, it was just doing it like differently. But in terms of like, I'm shooting a rocket, I don't want to see this thing shoot like the Winter Bite Glaive shot and be like I want that thing to be like, you're gone, like damage done, pull out my special weapon, bang 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 bang. Like, if you don't know, you don't know. All right, last one, last weapon, aggressive frame. This is my other favorite rocket launcher, the Cold Comfort. The Cold Comfort, it gets a super unique roll, envious, bait and switch, and its origin trait lets you, it used to let you stack, I think, almost up like to 5, but I know they like nerfed it. I think that came with like the envious nerf, but then they boost rocket reserves. But I think, I want to say either, I think adaptives were like the only one that barely got touched. I have impact casing on mine. I have hard launch, velocity masterwork, same exact thing. This is the last weapon. So, oh, I also want to mention I did run targeting adjuster on the precision. Probably should have been running a boss spec, but hey. So this is basically the end of all the guns. I didn't cover swords. Holy cow. Let's cover swords. I don't even have it in my notes. Oh man, I am not prepared for this. And swords are actually going to be important, so let's do this. All right, this is all off the top of the head. Caster frames. These things just got some love. Actually, it's going to be really easy for me to talk about swords. So, off the rip, doesn't even matter what sword you have. It depends on how you want to use it. So, you always have the impact masterwork, which will give you more damage. You are always running backup mag, no matter what. And now there are two swords that matter at all to me. That these are the only things that like really matter. and I hate to be like this definitive thing, if you are using a sword to eager edge, or you're trying to use it for potentially a super long boss phase like Relentless Strikes, you could do Enduring Blade. Yes, this brings your damage down, but like something with eager edge, you just have more eager edge ammo. And that's important because the whole point of eager edge is to fly around the map and not run out of ammo. If you're doing like speed runs, you can make an argument that you'll probably get to the next thing you're trying to get to before you even run out of ammo. But like, I have an eager edge roll. I'm not bringing it into a boss fight to do damage. So I don't need to run jagged edge. Like, I don't need more damage on an eager edge sword. It's literally a movement tech thing. You don't need it. Now, if you had an insanely long damage phase, which we have no idea what the witness is going to be like, Enduring Blade could be a play over jagged edge. If you have Relentless Strikes, if you're like, nope, I'm going jagged edge, I've got Relentless Strikes, I'm going to get so much ammo, I wouldn't even be able to use all this ammo in one damage phase, that's fine, do that. But if you're like, I want to do damage for even longer and even longer and even longer, then run Enduring Blade, put on Relentless Strikes. This one doesn't have it, unfortunately. But if you're just going for damage in a short damage window, you want jagged edge, you want impact masterwork, only thing, backup mag, and you want Swordmaster's Guard. Swordmaster's Guard gives you the is the only one that boosts your charge rate by 10. It's the only one that boosts your charge rate at all. Unless you're using a sword for guarding, this comes right back to Glaives. There's no need to even have any of these whatsoever at all. These are all like super useless in my opinion. I think they need to rework these, because if I get a sword and it doesn't have like Swordmaster's Guard, I'm like, okay, I don't need it, like delete. Yeah, caster frames, these just got a bump. Do not sleep on these. I like them a lot. I've been using them for like ad clear. I've seen surrounded used in like boss damage phases. They're actually not bad. If we were to look at any other frame, probably the second most popular frame, or I'm sorry, the first most popular frame is going to be your Vortex frame, 100% Vaughn Guillotine. This thing just got reworked. This in a very short damage window, and you have a team that's reliably making ammo for you. You're looking at jagged edge, Swordmaster's Guard, impact masterwork, backup mag, and like frenzy and surrounded if you can proc it, frenzy and bait and switch if you want to like wither horde, submachine gun, pull out your sword, get 10 seconds off and then put it back, or whirlwind strikes if you do not want to do a bait and switch. Eventually it will get up to the 30. They both are the same exact damage buff. One just activates and then you have to reactivate. The only thing I like about reactivating bait and switch, once again, getting the perks when I shouldn't, is applying a special weapon attack that can like linger, such as a wither horde, will just be more overall damage as long as you're super fast with your hot swaps to get right back into bait and switch. And that's it. That was the last one. I really hope there wasn't some random gun archetype I missed. This has been a doozy. If you made it to the end, hey man, I appreciate you. I love you. Say it back. No, seriously, I've been wanting to do something like this for a really long time, and it's taken me a lot of like courage to get comfortable to like just do this stuff. I could talk about this stuff all day on the phone with my friends, but the difference is like, you know, no one else sees it, and I have to repeat myself to all my friends. So now at least when they ask me, hey, what's a good roll, I'm gonna link in this, be like, listen to this like 7-hour video. Hey man, Final Shape comes out tomorrow. I'm gonna be posting videos of the story first. I won't be making any content. I am not like in a rush to basically get out all the weapon stuff. I would like to try to like speed farm the red borders, and I will cover weapons by how you get them, right? So like Pale Heart weapons, I'm just going to cover all of them at once. Once again, it's going to be a combination of the barrels and mags video with like a perk video in one. It'll be a lot shorter because we're just going to break down 5. I'll have everything like preloaded with my notes, and I'll be like, I'm either going to use this roll, these are the possible barrels I would use. If they're craftable, I might just give you the role I'm looking for, but I'm going to talk about how it fits into my arsenal, right? Like, what am I going to use this sniper for? Like, I don't need another PvP sniper. I don't need another PvP pulse rifle. I have the guns that I like to use, or I'll explain to you if I think that they are so good that they potentially replace a weapon, right? Like, is a new hand cannon this season, a 140, going to make me want to replace my Rose hand cannon? That is the question of the video. I'm excited. I can't wait to play. I'm speechless. Tomorrow's going to be a insanely memorable day. If you like this video, if you didn't mind the podcast style stuff, leave a comment in the bottom just saying, hey, I like this. I listened to it on my car ride home. Super useful information. Wouldn't mind having a perk video about this. If some of you comment and you're like, nope, this was terrible, this was way too long, and I regret ever listening to a single word you say, I want more visuals, I didn't understand a single thing you just said, I will try to play around what anybody says in the comments, or even just like people in my clan, whoever watched this, let me know if you loved it, hated it. That is it. Hey, and as always, stay classy, Guardian.